Welcome to the Jamal Thomas Morning Show. My name is Jamal Thomas. This is indeed my show. It is early. I hope you guys are doing well this morning. I got to be honest, my powers are not necessarily at their greatest. I refuse to admit that this, whatever this is dragging on me. It is dragging on me. I am still fighting it, even if I don't acknowledge it. So I have cold medicine. That is not going to stop us from a damn good show. And we have a damn good show. We're going to have Brian Mier. He is coming on to the show. One of my audience members asked me to cover the Cuban doctors issue, where Rubio goes, bashes the Cuban doctors. I believe he was in Jamaica. And it was a representative, or it might have even been the president, had to effectively put Rubio in his place, saying these people are indispensable to our nation. He's also going to talk about the case in Brazil, that where the Supreme Court effectively said they can prosecute Bolsonaro. Now, I am going to take a different tack than some of the other people on social media. It is true that in Romania, you can see them going after the political figure, Carlin Gorgescu. It is true that they went after Trump in this kind of legalist way. It is true they went after Marie Le Pen in this way. Bolsonaro is different. Bolsonaro is different. And the reason I say he's different is because, for one, he got Lula put in a cage himself. Two, the man wouldn't necessarily acknowledge the fact that the election was lost, or he didn't want to acknowledge the election result. And three, the cage thing for me is different. Like the fact, and maybe this is going back to number one, Bolsonaro was threatening the courts at the time where Lula, especially under this Operation Car Wash stuff, where they were effectively working with the United States in order to get data and information in order to put Lula in a cage. Bolsonaro ends up threatening the court, acting as if, oh, we're going to have a military dictatorship if, you don't do what I need you to do. So I am less sympathetic to him in this case, as opposed to some of the other people. From my point of view, you were perfectly fine putting your political opponent in a cage. Don't cry to me. Don't cry to me. I'm not the person to cry to. If this is a game of power that you guys are playing, fair enough. You're playing a game of power. First time you won, you got your political opponent in a cage. This time, looks like you lost. There's no sympathies here. I told you, I thought Trump should have been put in a cage the first time around when he wouldn't accept the results of the election under Joe Biden. I have no sympathies under this case. You are in a political space, and in this political space, you are endowed with ungodly amounts of power in regards to your position in that office. Look at what Trump is doing right now. He is effectively blowing off due process. There's no political opposition. There's barely any legal opposition to him. He is bombing Yemen illegally, by the way. Congress hasn't said squat. There's a lot of power that is vested in that office. And if you, when you lose, decide, I'm going to use this power that has been given to me by the voters of a particular country in order to deny the fact that I lost, you lose my sympathies. You just lose them. I don't have them. I don't care. Whatever happens to you, happens to you. Fuck it. It's on you. That's the way I feel about it. Now, I understand some people may take issue with that. I don't care. That's my point of view. And so, no, I do not put Bolsonaro in that same category as I put some of those other people who are being maligned by the political system. So fair enough. So there's that. We also have Margaret Kimberly. Margaret Kimberly is going to, I think she's going to hit Sudan, and she's also going to deal with this question of whether or not Donald Trump is really different than other Republicans. Now, consider he is effectively throwing people out of the country into countries that they don't belong. Okay, that's different. But keep in mind, this is, for the most part, an extension of what George Bush was doing in regards to eliminating habeas corpus, coming up with new terms and new rules in order to torture and all of this other stuff. Torture is against the law. getting rid of habeas corpus is pretty astonishing. And so, is this really radically different? Or is this just the next iteration? She's going to answer that. There's also, oh, by the way, that story is fascinating. That story is fascinating. Ryan Grimm has done God's work in covering that story in regards to putting those, I believe they say, MS-13 members, sending them to Venezuela without any sort of due process at all. And many of those people were Venezuelans sent to El Salvador and also innocent because there was no due process. How would you know? How do you know who is guilty, who is a gang member? And even if they are guilty, how are you sending somebody from Venezuela to El Salvador? That is astonishing. And all of this power is effectively taken by the Trump administration because, we're the Trump administration. I remember, though, when Obama, what was it? Eric Holder made this argument that judicial action could take place in the executive branch. I don't exactly, it's vague recollection. I remember that statement because I was like, whoa, really? The executive branch can make judicial decisions? Well, slap me with a plan. I didn't know that. That's pretty astonishing to me. If that's true, why do we have judges at all, if that's the case? And so, again, power is taken. And if nobody stops you from taking it, then it's yours until somebody stops you from taking it. The president doesn't have the power to bomb Yemen, and yet he's doing it, right? But I hear a beep. That beep typically means a guest has joined me. I would like to get to my guests. I believe this is the first time I've had the opportunity to meet you. Brian, how do I pronounce your last name? Is it Mier?
Yes, correct.
Right. I was aware of you for a very long time, but this is the first time I had the opportunity to meet you. Welcome to the show. How you doing today? You doing all right?
Yeah, pretty good. Thanks for having me on. I like
No, man, I appreciate it. And just to give the bio, Brian Mier, he's a journalist, geographer who has lived in Brazil for more than 26 years. He's a co-editor for the independent news website, Brazil Wire, a damn good magazine, by the way. Brazil correspondent for Telesur, English news program from the South. Thank you for this. And both of those really good institutions to be a part of. I have to get your take on something. I just made an argument that I think many of my audience may disagree with, but I want to get your take. Bolsonaro. So the Supreme Court in Brazil recently pointed out that he could stand trial. Now, explain this to me, because maybe I'm wrong in my take. My take, people have been pointing out Le Pen, Trump, calling Gagetscu, basically all of these people who, for whatever particular reason, the legal system has been used to go after them to prevent them from running in the race. They add Bolsonaro to that. And for me, I do not add him to that list, but maybe I'm wrong. What are they charging him with, or potentially charging Bolsonaro with?
First of all, it's very important to note that Bolsonaro was barred from running for political office for breaking election laws, abuse of authority, by transmitting a nearly 2-hour rant against Brazil's electronic voting system in a meeting with a group of over 100 foreign diplomats while he was president, and transmitted it on live national public television. That's an electoral crime. This was like 6 weeks before the election. He didn't provide any evidence. He was barred 2 years ago. So bringing it up now in relation to Marine Le Pen is irrelevant. He can't run anyway, right? People like Glenn Greenwald are citing polls, imaginary polls, because he can't be a candidate, which show him ahead of Lula at the moment. For the last 2 years, Lula's been dominating all the polls. What's happened is there was a series of climactic disasters last year that affected a lot of the crops in products like coffee. So like the month that they just did this poll that shows Bolsonaro's ahead of Lula, coffee prices just doubled in Brazil. And everyone's like grumpy because they can't afford their morning coffee, because Brazilians drink a huge amount of coffee, so everyone's like, screw Lula. But that's not going to go on for very long. And the case against Bolsonaro now was very carefully laid out. It was almost a 2-year, 3 investigations that were carried out over the course of 2 years. A joint parliamentary investigation, which recommended his indictment, then an over 1-year-long federal police investigation, which produced 884 pages of material evidence against Bolsonaro and like 34 of his cronies. And then they turned it over to the Attorney General's office. The Attorney General's office did a follow-up investigation in which they lowered the number of indicted people to 32. They removed the president of Bolsonaro's Liberal Party from the indictments and produced this 234-page report, which it handed to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court then read it over, approved it to move forwards. So at this point, they gave all of the defense lawyers time to make out their legal arguments. In one case, Bolsonaro requested that judgment of the evidence, which is the next procedural step, be done by the full plenary session instead of one group of 5 judges. But even one of Bolsonaro's own appointees voted against that. That lost 9-1 in the Supreme Court. So they pushed it back to after they'd heard all the defense arguments, they said, we approve moving forwards. So then the Attorney General's office gave it its stamp of approval, kicked back to the courts, the Supreme Court, and last week they had a process called the formal review of evidence. And all this does is it establishes materiality. Is there enough material evidence to move forwards with a case? And it was a unanimous ruling in the first panel of the Supreme Court, 5-0, to move forwards on 5 criminal charges against Bolsonaro. And in this first batch, 7 of his accomplices, including General Augusto Heleno, who many people remember as the head of MINUSTA's armed forces during the Cité Soleil massacre in Haiti. He is a long-standing, far-right, neo-fascist military general whose roots go back to the military dictatorship. He was the personal aide-de-camp, assistant of a general who tried to hold an auto coup in 1978, who refused, there was a small group of hardliners inside the army that refused to turn the government back over to civilian control, which was underway at that time. And he goes back that far. This is the first time generals have ever been put on trial in Brazil since before the 1964 US-backed military coup. So and the charges are like leading an armed conspiracy to create a democratic rupture with the rule of law, attempted coup d'etat, attempted plotting the assassinations of President Lula, Vice President Geraldo Alckmin, and one of the Supreme Court justices, Alexandre de Moraes, who's being made out by people like Elon Musk, Michael Schellenberger, Glenn Greenwald, Tucker Carlson, these types of people, to be this huge boogeyman who's secretly running the government, when in all, he's just one of 11 Supreme Court justices. He's not even the Supreme Court president or chief minister, but he has this kind of like Dr. Evil look to him. So he looks good in names and stuff, so this is a process that's been going on for 2 years. It's not like they just woke up and said, oh, look, they're putting Marine Le Pen on trial. Let's do the same thing in Brazil because we want to join this bandwagon of persecuting, real populist leaders, like Jair Bolsonaro. Yeah, Jair Bolsonaro, who once posted on a neo-Nazi website, you guys are the reasons I came into politics.
No, I appreciate that. Because, again, I came on, it's like, I did not put him on that list. He is a different animal to me. Like, the notion, like, I remember when Lula, with the car wash, Operation Car Wash, and Bolsonaro threatened one of the judges in it, which ended up being the deciding vote, and correct me if I'm wrong on this, that ended up getting Lula put in a cage. And I'm like, okay, am I really going to be sympathetic in this case when you put your political opponent in a cage and you listed all of those sins right off the bat? He will get his day in court and it will be decided at that point. From your take on it, though, I mean, Glenn Greenwald has been very critical of the Brazilian political system, effectively saying that going after Bolsonaro is effectively ignoring democratic order, that it's somehow a breach of authority.
That ironically, right? Because these
Mhm.
guys tried to enact a military coup. That's an actual breach of authority.
Yes. Yes. And Glenn Greenwald would have been complaining about, oh my God, I can't believe they breached military authority. Yeah. No, I totally agree with you on this. From your take, Lula, when I was there, I was covering the Brazilian elections when Lula ran against Bolsonaro. I was shocked, I got to be honest, by some of the takes of people. When Lula first went in, left politics, he was at like 80% approval. He was one of the most popular politicians that was around the world, not just in Brazil. This time around, it was very close. It was like 51-48 or something, or 51-49. Why so close? And I got to be honest, many of the people that I was talking to on the ground were for Bolsonaro. One guy even pointed out we need a dictatorship in Brazil because, we need people to get stuff done. And as I prodded him, it was kind of like, but let's assume for the moment you're right and Lula is corrupt. But he was giving back all of the stuff to the public. If you were getting something from it, why would you be pissed off by it, considering you're not getting anything from the other side? He was like, hey, that's a really good point. It's like, what do you mean that's a good point? You were just asking for a military dictatorship.
Yeah.
Like,
The
what
dictatorship was,
happened?
yeah. Well, there's a couple things that happened, but first of all, when you look at that result of that election, you have to realize that part of the indictment, one of the people who's indicted in this case by the Attorney General's office who's going up against the Supreme Court is former National Highway Police Chief Anderson Torres, who had thousands of highway patrolmen only in the districts where Lula was polling the highest, harass and stop voters from trying to get to the polling stations on election day. And there's thousands of cases of this. So probably about 1%, 1.2% dip in the vote for Lula was just these hundreds of thousands of people being blocked from voting, kind of like what Jeb Bush did in Florida in 2000 with African American voters. So they went to the Northeast where Lula had the most popularity, and they did that. Bolsonaro also illegally harnessed the power of the state to do things like 1 month and a half before elections. He said, well, I'm going to temporarily, raise welfare payments by 50% until after the elections. He did that in a cynical ploy, thinking that like poor people just voted for Lula because of money handouts or something, right? It's kind of like this Republican or whatever, like libertarian idea. And in that case, it didn't really work that well. Most of the people who voted for Bolsonaro were middle class white men, white Catholic middle class men making over 5 times the minimum wage were his largest demographic. Among poor populations, Lula still carried 70% of the vote or something. So It didn't work that well, but it was illegal. It was an illegal ploy. And so that explains some of that. And then there's also this kind of like algorithm manipulation on the social media. We know that all of big tech supports the far right in Brazil. And you see how they create these kind of last minute surges in elections all the time through Instagram and X and all of these other, WhatsApp conversation groups bombarding people with disinformation. That was a major factor in the election as well, and that is the main factor in why such a large percent of the population, 44% right now, believe that Bolsonaro is innocent. Or that not that he's innocent, or that he shouldn't be tried, because there's an amnesty movement going on. Bolsonaro himself has admitted guilt. This is another difference between him and Le Pen. He's not saying I'm innocent anymore. He's saying I want amnesty. I want to be pardoned. So he's trying to get his allies in Congress to pass a law pardoning him for his crimes. He himself is not saying he's innocent. Glenn Greenwald's saying he's innocent. Bolsonaro himself doesn't say he's innocent. He admits it. He admits he was at the meeting when they were planning to assassinate Lula, And he's just like, but that was just talk. You know, that's not a crime talking about it. And
That's
it is,
not
but
just
it is.
talk.
It
Yeah.
is a crime. So there's just a massive amount of disinformation through the social media. People are being heavily manipulated by algorithms into.
No,
See,
please continue. I'm sorry.
No, into like making electoral decisions that will harm them. You know, I'm not saying Lula's doing a fantastic job or anything. He's got problems. The government's got a lot of problems, and one of it's because he can't get his mandate strong enough because of this constant bombardment of disinformation. Right. One thing he's trying to do is relieve 90% of Brazil's workers from having to pay income tax. And so the libertarians on the far right are opposed to this because it includes raising the tax on the super rich.
Oh.
So like the anti-tax people are like opposed to this, and they're putting all this, they're bombarding the public with all this disinformation that this would be bad for the 90% of the population that won't have to pay income tax anymore. You know, every attempt he does to try and put taxes on the super wealthy and on large fortunes, things like that, there's this massive anti-Lula publicity campaign with lies. Like they had a lying campaign. There's a kind of electronic transaction called PIGS here, where you use your phone or whatever, you scan a QR code, and they announced they were going to start taxing all transactions over like $50,000 on it. And the far right immediately put out thousands of different videos and memes and things like that, announcing that the government was going to tax every transaction for like $1 or something. And so large percentages of the population believe this crap. You know, this is like a worldwide phenomenon that's happening everywhere.
And voted against their own interests.
Yeah, well.
Wow. I mean, what is the makeup of the parliament or Congress in Brazil?
The Workers' Party has 14%. Lula's Workers' Party has 14% of Congress. And together with some inner allies, about 18% of Congress. Mm-hmm. Even so, they've still managed to push through a lot of things through this broader coalition with this, what they call the center-right. But some of Brazil's center-right is actually really far right. You know, some of it would support, like, you know, still talks positively about the dictatorship. Some of the center-right, but he's built a coalition with the center-right by handing out ministries to different people, which kind of cripples the ability to run a left-wing government when you've got conservatives in different ministries, right? Important ministries. But through that, he's managed to hold on to like a slim majority in Congress. But this is like, it's like a Chuck Schumer style majority in which like they'll vote for him for their PT's measures on some key issues of policy, but when you get into the economics, all of a sudden some of these people start jumping.
Yeah, they drop off.
Yeah, dropping off. So he's having a tough time with it, really. You know, just.
Well, I assume he was going to have a tough go of it. I mean, like I said, when I saw that people were hanging out at the military station begging for them to overthrow the government, and it's like, whoa, what is happening right now? Like, that is amazing to me. Like, the dictatorship itself, why is part of the population enamored with the dictatorship?
Well, you know, like I've been living in Brazil 30 years now. The bio information you gave for me is like a little outdated, but ever since I've moved to Brazil, I first moved to Brazil in 91. Ever since I've moved to Brazil, 20% of the people I ever talk to speak fondly of the dictatorship and some fascist ideals. And then a larger percentage of the middle class supports a lot of fascist ideals, like killing drug dealers, summary execution of drug dealers, mostly black people, right? Obviously in the favelas and stuff like that. Like they're killing teenagers and stuff like that. Super violent police force has the support of most of Brazil's like white middle class, even if they pretend to be progressive and liberal and stuff like that. So there's always been a core element of fascism in Brazil, back to the 1930s when Brazil had the largest Nazi party outside of Germany, outside of Europe. And it had an indigenous fascist movement called the Integralists, who wore green armbands with a Greek letter E on them. A bunch of weirdos they influence the dictatorship. And Bolsonaro has sympathy with a lot of those integralist principles, which he's talked about through his political career. I think social media was used systematically under guidance of Steve Bannon, which we know he's very close to Eduardo Bolsonaro and some of Bolsonaro's other children. Dating back to like 2017, they started systematically blowing up sympathy for a lot of like fascist principles and ideals. At the same time that the Koch apparatus, the Koch brothers started Koch or whatever. Sorry if I'm mispronouncing
Koch
the way
brothers.
I truly feel about them.
Koch brothers. Yeah, the Koch brothers.
But they started in 2013 financing all of these student libertarian groups, creating groups like Students for Liberty. So they bombarded the population with this kind of like, it's really like the first time libertarianism ever arrived in Brazil, honestly. So it was like a merger of these groups that were pushing this libertarianism with this fascist idealism, At the same time, elements of the far right started this Ukrainize Brazil campaign through connections with Azov. This is like 2013, 2014.
Wow.
And so these forces kind of like converged, but massive propaganda coming from outside of Brazil on the social media networks, paid for by business elites, who benefit from business elites always benefit from fascist style policies and stuff like that, because it's a smoke and mirror game. You take all the blame off of the rich and put it on some scapegoated group. In Brazil would be the communists, or everybody who's left of center. Bolsonaro called The Economist magazine the E-Communist once. The Economist is like a bastion of right-wing economics for 180 years.
Communists.
Yeah, but it's just dumb. Well, Trump does the same stuff. He calls. I wish Joe Biden was an actual communist. It's too late now. But calling the Democrats communists is pretty.
Oh, ridiculous. It's absurd. They get nothing done. They're absolutely pathetic. They're in fact, they're in shambles at this point. They're completely irrelevant. They're not even a political opposition to Trump at this point.
Sadly.
I'm curious on something else. BRICS. In what effect has BRICS had on Brazil in and of itself? They're expanding, obviously, and they clearly have a certain percentage of the wealth in regards to more than the G7 at this point. How have you seen the effect on the ground in Brazil?
Yeah, definitely. Because look, when BRICS started, the U.S. was Brazil's largest trade partner. Now Brazil's trading with China at a 3-to-1 ratio compared to the United States. The U.S. is a distant second in importance in trade. Very different from the situation faced by Mexico right now, right? In a very different situation. In fact, under Bolsonaro, who Tucker Carlson presented in this ridiculous documentary, election season documentary, as this bastion, this wall that would stand between China and Brazil. Trade with China increased dramatically under Bolsonaro. In fact, when he auctioned off, the only times he auctioned off oil fields belonging to the state petroleum company, Petrobras, which the U.S. has been dreaming of dismantling since the 1950s, the only offshore auction he held, the oil fields were entirely bought up by Chinese companies. So Bolsonaro was selling off Brazilian assets to the Chinese. He tried to privatize the national electric grid, and there was a Chinese company that was going to buy it. And so there's nothing, he didn't really do anything to stop trade with China. He just used a lot of anti-Chinese rhetoric and racist. One of his ministers had to retire because he was making racist caricatures of Chinese people on his social media and stuff like that. And then he visited China. Yeah. He visited China and said, "Oh, this isn't communist," It's those people in Brazil. They're the communists. This isn't communist.
So he is
But
being racist to China while selling off
yeah,
items of the
trying
country
to,
to China.
yeah. But then, you can see that China respects the Workers' Party much, much more than it did the Bolsonaro government. That stuff of growing trade under Bolsonaro was just trade. In the case of the PT, you saw Lula had this massive red carpet treatment with a full band and everything when he made his trip there. Dilma Rousseff is really respected as bank president, new development bank president. She was just reelected. I think almost unanimously. Everybody's really happy with her at the New Development Bank. She's going to be in charge for another 5 years, regardless of what happens in the 2026 elections. Some people say that, well, there's a lot of criticism you could make about BRICS. I mean, some people were trying to act like BRICS was going to be this new military bloc, and it doesn't seem like there's any evidence. Oh, the BRICS are going to save everybody in the world from the United States, from NATO and stuff like that. I don't think. I mean, you look at their reaction to Gaza right now, for example. I don't see very much promising hope coming out of the BRICS on that issue, really. But,
it was an economic bloc. I didn't think it was a military organization.
No, but some of these edgelords, I'm just saying, some of these like Eurasia edgelords on the internet and stuff were acting like a year ago as if BRICS was going to be this military force, when Iran joined. But economically, yeah, I think that I have a feeling that like China can't just pull the rug out under the U.S. economy because it's in a way it's like too big to fail almost. So what they have to do is kind of like chip away at it. What other countries around the world have to do to weaken the U.S.'s nefarious imperialist influence, which is driving up poverty and sadness all over the world, is to chip away at it. And so these new increasing transactions between BRICS nations using their local currencies, I think, is very positive. I don't think there's going to be a new BRICS currency in the immediate future, but it would be great if it happened at some point.
Yeah. Why did Lula, or let's say Brazil, veto Venezuela's entry into BRICS?
Look, I was in Venezuela I covered the elections for Telesur in July, and a lot of people are really bummed out, pissed off at Lula. From what I understand, they got into this personal beef. It started getting really personal between Maduro and Lula. And, for example, Lula, first of all, Brazil tried to project itself as this non-aligned, kind of like impartial force around the world when Lula took office, which is what it's a historical fact of Brazil and foreign relations, right? So like by going and saying and taking a neutral position with China in the war in Ukraine, they condemned the occupation, military occupation, but they also condemned Zelensky. They refused to arm Zelensky. They're doing this tightrope walk, and they started doing it in Venezuela. And at first, it was a coalition of Colombia, Mexico, and Brazil moderating the elections. Now, there's a problem that the Maduro administration never released the ballot information, right? So that's a problem. They allege that they were hacked, which I believe by Elon Musk's information. I mean, our network went down on election night. We were hacked. Yeah. So I'm pretty sure they were hacked, but you can't hack individual ballots. There was a massive surge in WhatsApp and other social media activity with anti-Maduro disinformation and propaganda during the week before the election and subsequent coup d'etat attempt, which happened the day after the election. I think, and when they started going back, at first Brazil said they supported the election results and that they would just wait for the ballot information to make an official statement on it. The ballot information never came. The Workers' Party, a week later, issued an official statement recognizing the election results. So Lula, the Lula government broke from the Workers' Party on this, his own party. And during this back and forth of escalating insults between Maduro and Lula, Maduro supported Jair Bolsonaro's theory about the elections being stolen in 2022.
What?
Yeah. And Lula blew his top.
I can imagine. It's an attack on his legitimacy.
But he was kind of attacking Maduro's legitimacy too.
Yeah, true.
And these two countries need each other right now. And I think it was an error to veto Venezuela's entrance in the BRICS. I think it was dumb. And that doesn't mean I don't support the Lula administration. Everyone does things you did. Lula always manages to piss off everybody with one or two things while he's president. But the whole the whole group of things he does is enough for people to support him and like him. That was one of the low points. I think one of the low points, if not that's the foreign policy low point of the Lula administration. That, and also having the ambassador kicked out of Managua, which is BS.
Oh, wait, I don't know that one. The ambassador for who? Oh, for a Venezuelan ambassador kicked out of Managua.
No, Brazilian ambassador was kicked out of Managua. This is another thing. The ambassadors, a lot of them are super right wing. I mean, this was an ambassador who was appointed by Bolsonaro, who was anti-Nicaragua, but he was kicked out of Nicaragua. The Pope asked Lula to try and see if he could get some of these Catholics who were arrested for their role in the coup attempt in Nicaragua out of jail. I mean, some of these Catholic priests were stockpiling automatic weapons. When they were arrested, they had hundreds of automatic weapons. I mean, Lula remembers the dictatorship. There's two groups in the Catholic Church. There's the liberation theology people in Latin America who have been shrinking over the years, and there's these fascist Catholics. I mean, he knows there's fascist Catholics. There's a lot of these fascist bishops supported Bolsonaro. So I don't know why he would get involved in that. But he's super Catholic, and it's the Pope asked him. He's probably I don't want to go to hell.
Two more stories. I guess one of my viewers wanted me to bring up this. Marco Rubio goes to Jamaica and trashes Cuban doctors. Just completely trashes Cuban doctors. This is pretty amazing considering Cuban doctors have gone all around the world providing healthcare. Cuba dumps a bunch of money into education and medicine, and that is a benefit to the rest of the world. Rubio apparently doesn't think so. This is him.
This is not about the provision of medical assistance. We have no problem with medical assistance. We have no problem with doctors. But I'm just talking about this program in general, how it's operated around the world. And how it's operated around the world is that basically the doctors are not paid. They basically operate as forced labor.
Let us be clear. The Cuban doctors in Jamaica have been incredibly helpful to us. Jamaica has a deficit in health personnel, primarily because many of our health personnel have migrated to other countries. We are, however, very careful not to exploit the Cuban doctors who are here. We ensure that they are treated within our labor laws and benefit like any other worker. So any characterization of the program by others certainly would not be applicable to Jamaica. We are ensuring that our program complies with all the international laws and standards to which we are a party to.
This is not about the provision of medical assistance. We have no problem with medical assistance. We have no problem with doctors. I'm just talking.
So.
He cares about human rights. Ooh, it's the human rights we're worried about. Look, as ICE is doing everything, we're worried about human rights in Latin America and the Caribbean. Seriously? You're arresting children who are U.S. citizens, pulling them out of schools right now, accidentally arresting U.S. citizens. So I don't think you really care about human rights.
Yeah, I don't think they care about human rights all that much either. And, the notion that he's attacking effectively doctors and the use of those doctors is just outrageous. Just completely outrageous.
The international far right is all connected to each other. And this was one of the issues that was used to drum up support for the impeachment, which was a it was a parliamentary coup against Dilma Rousseff. There was no crime committed. She was just impeached arbitrarily. And one of the things was this, because she brought in 18,000 Cuban doctors. And the media tries to say, oh, they're slaves. They're doing slave labor for Cuba because, like, the way the system works is that they receive a salary from the government of the country they go to. And Cuba establishes what a comfortable middle class salary would be out of that big salary. And the rest of the money is kicked back to their medical programs so they can keep sending doctors to other parts of the world that don't have money to pay their doctors. And all of the doctors who enter this program know that they're not going to get, for example, in Brazil, doctors in the public system we're getting like 13 or 14,000 reais a month. At the time, this was like $6,000 a month or something. And so the Cubans made a deal with like the Brazilian government that they would receive like $1,800 a month, which in Brazil would be like making about $6,000 or $7,000 a month, money-wise, plus their housing is paid for, and the rest of the money kicks back to the program. This is what the Rubio and the State Department are trying to pretend is some kind of slavery system. Which is,
That's outrageous. That's so outrageous. Like, they are a national good. They're a national good. And I'm glad that that gentleman came out and pointed out they are a national good. This is not, Rubio's take on this is just outrageous. One last thing.
Just add one quick thing. Everyone in Brazil who uses the public health system, me included, is always like super happy when they find out the doctors that's going to attend them is Cuban. The Cuban doctors have a reputation of being much better than the Brazilian doctors because they listen to the patients.
Really?
Brazilian doctors are elites who don't listen to poor people or working class people when they're trying to tell them their problems. Half the time they're talking on the phone. The Cuban doctors listen to people. They treat the situation homeopathically. They're used to cheap solutions for health issues. They ask people like, what have you been eating? Well, do you get any exercise? All this kind of stuff that when you go into a Brazilian public health doctor, normally they just look at you and they give a prescription. Say, all right, there, take antibiotics.
That's outrageous. Wow, that is amazing. Yeah, that is amazing. One last thing. There is a story, and I should have hit you with the story, but I saw the story this morning. It came out by Ryan Grimm, and it has to do with El Salvador. Do you know? Okay, so Donald Trump has been deporting people to El Salvador who are Venezuelan, effectively taking people who are Venezuelan who without due process, meaning we don't know if they're innocent or guilty, most likely they're innocent, mixing them up with gang members, and then sending them to El Salvador. Come to find out that Bukele apparently had a relationship, or not relationship is the wrong word. What Bukele apparently was doing behind the scenes, according to the story, was working with the gangs and having conversations and negotiations with high-level gang members in order to, we will give you political favors, we may give you resources and money, we may give you legal cover, etc. We're going to help you be the most powerful gang. We're going to work with you. We need you to cut down the killings, and we need you to support us politically and other people around us politically so we can be the strongest political party, have a supermajority. And we can run out on stage and say, hey, crime is down. We've done fantastic work. Am I not awesome? And it was one of the gentlemen that was deported that apparently was the link that Bukele wanted to get his hands on in order to make sure that he doesn't testify in court that effectively this relationship was taking place. Do you know anything about this? I mean, this is in the weeds. I didn't ask you about this in advance.
No, but I will say this. This is how a lot of city governments have worked in just about every city I've ever lived in my life, including Chicago, where I grew up during the Daley times. They had to fire a couple police chiefs because of involvement with the gangs and the partnerships with the gangs and the mafia and things like that. And this is common in Brazil. The police in Rio de Janeiro, when I was living there, they would rent out their armored vehicles to one gang so they could invade the territory of another gang. And so it just seems like business as usual. And obviously, one of the best ways to lower crime in a city with a lot of gangs is make a deal with the gangs. I mean, if you look at Sao Paulo in Brazil, Sao Paulo has one of the lowest murder rates in the world of any big city. I mean, it's almost like a European level murder rate. And it's because one gang consolidated all of the favelas in the whole city and a lot of the other areas. And they made a deal with the state government that controls the police. It's just like, you don't make any problems, we won't make any problems. Let us arrest some people every once in a while just to show that we're doing our jobs, obviously, and things will continue as normal. And I think that's it. I'm not surprised that Bukele's done that, and that's part of his secret of lowering the crime rate in El Salvador.
That is amazing. So effectively, we'll let you do your crime, providing you don't get beyond a certain point. You may support
and don't kill a lot of people, right? Like,
right. Don't kill a lot of people.
Yeah. Don't do anything to draw attention to yourselves.
We don't like a lot of murders, so don't do that.
Yeah.
But we can negotiate. We can talk. We can have this open dialogue in regards to the way we deal with it. That is amazing. That is not the way Bukele presents himself. He presents himself as, I am super hard on these gangs. Look at what I'm doing to these gang members. I crush, testicles. You could send your gang members to me. That's the image that he portrays. Not, I'm working behind the scenes to negotiate to get political favors from murderous gangs in order to keep down the killings. Like, that is astonishing. And apparently, the guy who Trump deported was the guy that Bukele wanted because he didn't want the guy to testify in court.
He's a witness, so that guy's going to be killed maybe or something, right? You think? Is that what you're saying?
I don't know. I mean, at this point, he's in El Salvador. Yeah. He's been deported. So we have no idea what happens to him from here on out. He's out of U.S. custody.
It's just outrageous that in a context like this, Marco Rubio would be in Jamaica, like sternly lecturing Jamaica about its human rights by hiring Cuban doctors,
Oh man, that is so insane. Yeah, that is so insane.
They're about to invade Greenland and Panama, and they're like, oh, there's doctors, they're only making like 40% of what we think they should be making. That's slavery.
They are insane. This administration has been just completely nuts. Brian, man, I have appreciated this big time. I hope I haven't been too much of a pest. I appreciated your rundown of it. Like I said, I was in Brazil during the election. I was fascinated. Like, it was things that people were saying was catching me off guard. Only because, for my take, it was kind of like, okay, well, Lula had like 80% approval rating. How are you guys hating on this guy? Now, at the point where he won, people were running through the streets, driving through the streets, beeping horns and everything else. Many of them were excited. But there was a clear split in the society. And I was like,
English speakers are elites in Brazil. Anyone who speaks English is almost always going to be middle class and conservative. So if you don't speak Portuguese, you get a very skewed idea about what politics is like in Brazil. And this causes problems for a lot of journalists, when they first come down and stuff. And also there's big regional differences. Like in my state where I live, Pernambuco, Lula won with almost 70% of the vote. Whereas in the southeast, like Rio and Sao Paulo, he just squeaked by.
I think I was in Sao Paulo when I was covering. No, I was in Rio de Janeiro when I was covering.
Yeah. Well, Rio is the bastion of Bolsonarism, and it's the first state in Brazil that became majority population neo-Pentecostal Christian. And so Rio, despite its image of being this, party city and everything like that, it's actually very conservative. Outside of a few neighborhoods, it's where Bolsonaro comes from. It's his political base. So he's beloved in large sections of Rio.
That explains it. The food is fantastic. Oh God, the food is fantastic. Brian, where can people find you before I let you go?
Well, I have a Substack. Brazil Wire is in kind of like on a hiatus. We don't really publish much there anymore. So I have a Substack account called D-Lincoln Brazil with a hyphen, D-Lincoln.
Mhm.
And tell us, sir, English, Twitter, X, Blue Sky, that kind of stuff. I write for Counter, Punch, and Fair sometimes.
Yeah. All fantastic outlets. Tell us, sir, especially. Thank you for this, man. I really appreciate it. You be safe.
Thanks for
Have
having
a good
me.
one. All right. I appreciated that conversation. Also, I need to admit a mistake. I was playing around with the chat. There we go. Okay, good. He's back. Okay. I thought I screwed up. Fair enough. Fair enough. Look, I'm one of those people that, all things being equal, I'm against censorship. And it takes quite much, even though I was messing around with the chat and I thought I got rid of somebody. Thankfully, that wasn't the case. Brian Mier, shout out to him. He is really good, and a really good breakdown of what was taking place in Brazil. The wild part about this is he's right. Like, Glenn Greenwald has been like banging away at Morales. So when I was covering the elections, Morales was the judge that was being a bit of a hard ass, but he was being a bit of a hard ass for a reason, because you had elements of the police force that were preventing people from going to the voting locations. And he was effectively saying, look, I'm going to charge you like $20,000 every hour that you do this, or something like that, some insane amount of money for them to do it. So the fact that they're being prosecuted right now, they're being prosecuted for good reason for the election interference that they were effectively doing in that election. Again, I don't have any issue with that. Glenn Greenwald is getting this massively, massively wrong. He's getting this so wrong. Margaret Kimberly is going to be coming up at 9 o'clock. Michael Maloof is going to be coming up at 9:30. Both are going to have, I'm going to go through stories for Black Agenda Report, and for Maloof, there's stuff that's taking place in regards to Trump, Putin, Zelensky, etc. It's drama. And I got to be honest, I'm confused about what is taking place. Not many political analysts would be that transparent to point out that they are confused with what's taking place. But I think Mark even pointed out he has no idea what's happening. And the reason he says that is, I'll go here first. Let me get rid of Rubio, that asshole. So Donald Trump came out recently and said this. Now, I want you to pay attention to what Trump is saying here, because it matters. It's important. And it is a complete lie. It is a complete lie. He is hiding the ball. He's hiding the ball. He's hiding the ball. So I'm going to play it.
You have Zelensky, and hopefully he's going to live up. I see he's trying to renegotiate the rare earth. We made a deal for rare earth. It was all done. And I heard through you, I haven't spoken to them yet, but through you, I heard that they're now saying, well, I'll only do that deal if we get into NATO or something to that effect. Well, that was never, number one, discussed. Number two, I think it's going to be very long before Putin. They said you're not going into NATO. And it could be, that's probably the reason the war started. And you have Zelensky, and hopefully he's going to live up. I see he's trying to renegotiate the rare earth. We made it.
All right. I'm highlighting that because I want to talk about that. Trump is lying. Trump is lying through his teeth. They had a deal first, meaning Zelensky came up with this idea of a mineral deal. Now they're calling it a mineral deal because the thought was, okay, Ukraine has rare earths. They'll get the rare earths and give it to the United States, and they can do business with that. And the U.S. will be able to exploit Ukraine like a colony in order to get their hands on the rare earths. Trump came up and was like, well, hey, I have an idea for the deal. A, there're not going to be any security guarantees. B, the money that Joe Biden gave you is a loan, and we want that money paid back. And three, we will get pretty much all the rights in regards to that mineral deal. It was rape, to put it mildly. That first deal was already on us. Zelensky comes to the White House. Vance, Trump are sitting there, they're having a conversation. Zelensky wants to relitigate it in the middle of the press room as if the world or as if the American public was going to be on the side. Vance puts a knife in him. Trump follows up Vance and puts another knife in him. It was humiliating for Zelensky. And none of these people like him. Keep in mind, Zelensky didn't even wear a suit. He wore a janitor's outfit into the White House, which is why they kept deriding him on that issue. All right. Zelensky goes crying to Europe. Oh, it's okay. It's okay. It's okay. It's okay. Now, Trump comes back and makes a more onerous deal, meaning that wasn't the deal that Zelensky said he was going to sign. Trump re-upped the deal, made it even worse than what it was prior, where it will go indefinitely. All of these things are loans. Nothing goes to Ukraine until the loans are effectively paid back. Trump is using a figure of $300 billion as opposed to the $100 or $200 billion. And even including, I think it was like 4% interest on the $300 billion, with the US having controlling interests, not just rare earths, as they call it, a mineral deal, gas, oil, anything that effectively comes out of the ground in Ukraine, the US would have access to it and rights to decide upon it first. Trump is lying. Trump is lying. The deal is worse. Zelensky, for his part, is like, I'm not doing that. And Medvedev even pointed out he will be hung in Maidan with his cronies if indeed he decided to sign that deal. Even other members of Ukraine say, we can't sign that. There's no way that it's going to pass. All right. So that leads a question. A, is Donald Trump so comically ridiculous to believe that they can sign that deal? Or that they will be able to get Zelensky to knuckle under to sign that deal? Or did Donald Trump make a deal intentionally, knowing full well that Zelensky couldn't sign it? Those are two very different things, right? One is just willful blindness of a mob boss thinking that he can effectively turn Ukraine into a colony that he can mine for the foreseeable future indefinitely. The other one is deep politics. The other one is deep politics. And I'm hoping it's the other one. I'm hoping it's the other one because I don't want to believe Donald Trump is that stupid to do that. I would hope that there's no way he can sign this deal. I know he can't sign this deal. And I'm putting this deal out here anyway. And I'm going to deride him. I'm going to threaten him. I'm going to say bad things are going to happen if you don't sign this deal, even though I know full well that there is no way possible he could sign this deal. Now, if it's that, the question becomes why? Why are you doing that to him if indeed you want him to sign a deal? Now, maybe the thought is, I want them to fall apart on the battlefield. Maybe I've already made deals with Putin, meaning we already have agreements, regardless of this nonsense that I said about, oh, I'm very pissed off. Oh, I'm very angry that Putin is blah, blah, blah. I'm going to be talking to him in a few days. Meaning, is there an understanding of sorts that is already between the US and Russia, whereas all of this other stuff is just theater? And in the case of Zelensky, you may have Putin have told Trump, look, we want these regions, and we're not stopping until we get these regions. Full stop. I don't care what you do. This is what we want. And we need that. And we will end the war. And Trump may say, okay, fair enough, which means that the Ukrainian military needs to be ground down further with Russia accelerating its offensive to take more and more territory until we get to a point where a ceasefire can be reached because Russia's accomplished its military objectives. Trump has allowed that to effectively take place with the Ukrainian military being effectively decapitated. And a deal at that point, again, Russia accomplished the objectives of the special military operation. Putin said, I'm done. Now, there's a catch with that, though. The government of Ukraine. Now, The Economist has pointed out, damn it, I don't have the article up. The Economist has pointed out that Zelensky has done a U-turn on the issue of elections. Now, Trump, weirdly enough, attacked Putin for diminishing Zelensky's legality, which is something that Trump himself did when he said Zelensky was a dictator, didn't have elections, and had a 4% approval rating. Okay, so whatever, right? But in doing so, Zelensky has finally said, okay, we'll have elections. Now, The Economist is pointing out that Zelensky wants to have snap elections and wants to do it in a way to damage his political opposition. Now, they've already threatened Zelensky, effectively saying, if you run, you will be charged with blowing up Nord Stream, which is astonishing. That's amazing, right? And anybody else, in this case, Poroshenko, already has sanctions on him, so he can't run. And so Zelensky is trying to game the system to create a process where he is the only candidate that's running because the election is taking place so quick. Now, Poroshenko has effectively said, look, the election is going to take place between August and I believe he said October. Okay, well, that's not necessarily Zelensky timescale. He wants this to be done in a way where it can be assured that he himself wins. He wants to be and can remain in power. That is amazing. Trump doesn't want him in power, in which case Trump was working with and dealing with other people that may have some political clout that can effectively take that role and take that place of Zelensky. So there's a huge amount of political intrigue that's taking place right now in Ukraine over the case of the elections. But let's be clear, they're not going to be fair elections anyway. They've already banned opposition parties, especially parties coming out of the East. They've banned opposition media. All of that stuff is banned. They put sanctions on various political figures that they don't necessarily like, other political figures they've killed, or for that matter, put in jail. How can you have a fair election under a system like this? When they say Zelensky is a dictator, he's a dictator. That's what dictators do, right? It's the fig leaf of a political system. They've blown off elections for like a year. So Trump and Putin have an issue. How do you get a deal done with that goblin running around? And at this point, have effectively said, I'm not signing a deal. I'm running over to Europe and I'm going to work with Europe. And we have a plan in mind. I know we're going to pass more sanctions against Russia. Russia has moved into like the number 5 or 4 spot economically. They don't seem to be working. There were like 20,000 sanctions against them. Oh my God, you're passing another one. It's going to break us. They don't care, dude. They don't care. So there is a huge amount of political intrigue where it is kind of unclear what is taking place. Now, that may not be the case. Maybe it is not that sussed out in a sense of, okay, what are the framework to which we're operating? Maybe there's just chaos. And not just chaos. Maybe they've just stalled in regard to the negotiations in and of itself. Keep in mind, Russia doesn't trust America. I don't care what they say. Putin is not stupid enough to trust Donald Trump or anything that is coming out of America. So anything that is said from the Kremlin has to take that into account. If Trump is stupid enough to believe that, that's on him. They, under no circumstances, trust the United States, nor do they trust Trump. They may trust that he wants to end the war, maybe, but they don't know that. And all things being equal, in the same way that Donald Trump came in and kind of blew away this orthodox, the next president could do the opposite. So what they want is security. No more, no less. They want security. And the catch is, how do you get that security? That's the question. And ideally, you would think that there would be normalized relations with Europe that would allow you to get that particular security. Okay, well, Europe is losing its fucking mind. And they are still talking about sanctions. They're still talking about gearing up for a war that they would lose, by the way. But they're still talking about this militaristic stuff with France and France and the UK, who, by the way, was told very clearly, we do not have the military capability to do that. Our military is degrading before our eyes. Every word that comes out of our mouth, a chunk falls off a submarine in the UK military. A button falls off the shirt of a UK service member. So they're not in that position. And regardless of how preemie Macron walks around, the fact that they had to put Marie Le Pen out of the presidential race gets across that there is political division in France. Macron's party what is it, Renaissance Party. It's trash. He kept doing elections over and over again because he kept losing those elections. And from the standpoint of Macron, he can preen all he wants. The fact of the matter is Marine Le Pen most likely would have won in 2027, and Bardella, her underling, will most likely win in 2027 anyway, both of which are skeptical of the war. So for all of this talk in Europe about this toughness and everything else, good luck. Put your troops out there. Let them get destroyed by a 1 million-man Russian military that have been killing and dying for the last 3 years. Good luck. If you have this belief that Donald Trump is going to come to your rescue, think again. I could be wrong, but think again. Now, if indeed there is not some level of a framework of agreement, already Trump is saying no NATO. Already Trump is saying, well, those territories are going to belong to Russia. That's reality on the ground, right? Facts on the ground. How you change that? You don't have the military capability to do anything about it. So you're stuck with that, meaning you're stuck with certain realities based on the context of events that you fundamentally can't change. You have to acknowledge reality. Unless you want to go to war with Russia, which Donald Trump says he doesn't necessarily want to do, which these European idiots are threatening, or at the very least pumping their chests out as if they do. It's fascinating. It's hard to know what's actually taking place. Now, let's say for the moment that there is disagreement between Russia and the United States on this stuff. How do they suss that out? Oh, that's fascinating. The issue of Ukraine goes beyond Ukraine. And what I mean by that is, if you isolate it to Ukraine, then there's nothing really you can get out of that, which is the reason why Donald Trump wanted to bring in sanction relief. Okay, Marco Rubio goes back. He says, we need to talk with Europe in order to, try to get this Black Sea initiative started again. And Europe says, no, hell no, we're not doing it. And Zelensky, the goblin he is, standing right there beside him. And they're like, no, 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 no. We're not removing sanctions. So, suck it, Trump. Now, the catch becomes, okay, what does Trump do in this? Putin had already said he didn't believe that the sanctions were going to be removed. So any movement that they're doing economically is going to be done with those sanctions still on. And so how does Trump show good faith in regards to the Black Sea Initiative that he doesn't have the power to initiate himself? Now, he can try to put the screws to Europe. He can say, I'm going to destroy British steel. I'm going to destroy whatever. But Europe is effectively saying, hey, we have a remedy for that, or at the very least have something that we're going to do in order to push back on it. To make it even wilder, thus, not only are they not going to remove the sanctions in the way that Donald Trump wanted, they're adding more. Look at that. They're adding more. They're adding more. Fantastic. I don't know what's going on. I am fascinated by this, just the drama of it all, in the way that this transatlantic relationship has fundamentally broken down. It is fascinating, utterly fascinating. Didn't mean to go into that, but we had time, so I wanted to go into it. The Iran story is what I want to hit at. The Iran story is what I want to hit at. One of the audience members, Sergeant David Atlin, Marines, you and the proud. You and the proud. I love that, right? The world is going to see Iran become a parking lot. I hate to tell you, dude, that I don't even think the Trump administration thinks that. Iran is a country of, 80 million people. You may not know this. What is it, jarheads? Your job is just go and do, not necessarily think about that stuff. Iran is a country of 80-something million people. They are 3 times the size of Iraq. And you are talking about a bombing run that you believe is going to get everything that they have at their disposal to fire back at you. Military people often have these highfalutin ideas of what they can actually accomplish when the real world is different. When the Nazis were, doing their operation, and then they get stopped because there's mud, and then they're stuck in the mud, and they stay there for like all sorts of things happen that are just baked in reality that it is impossible to negotiate. I am very doubtful that U.S. has the capability of hitting any and everything from Iran before Iran fires off and destroys, or at the very least damages, all of the U.S. military bases with 60,000 people that are vulnerable at this moment. I have a hard time believing that they can't attack those ships at the distance to which they are at, what is it, Dietrich? What is the name of that place? Diego Garcia. They are vulnerable. Not to mention air defense. Like, all of this stuff is effectively being ignored as if Iran doesn't have the capability to A, knock shit out the sky, blow shit out the water, or after you finish your bombing run, to respond with overwhelming force, because at that point, what else do they have to give, right? You've already attacked them. So I'm very doubtful of your appraisal. I believe, look, the US military is an astonishing instrument. God bless you, right? But you're not, you don't walk on water. You're still tethered to reality. And in being tethered to reality is an honest acknowledgement that there are consequences for this. One of those has to do with Saudi Arabia, UAE, who will have mended fences with Iran in a way that wasn't true the first time around that Donald Trump was in. And they are effectively putting pressure, saying, hey, you're going to lose investments. What if Iran attacks the oil fields, which they could do, by the way, if the Houthis could do it and take down 5% of the world's oil, a sophisticated military like Iran, what do you think they can do? Like, do you not think of this stuff before you're popping up? Oh, they're going to get we're going to decimate what? A country 3 times the size of Iraq. Good luck. Good luck. Just comic book stuff. I get it. It feels good to puff your chest out. America's going to do X and Y. Yeah, for one, what is the legal basis that Donald Trump is doing this? How about that? And I get it. He's bombing Yemen, so there's no legal basis for him bombing Yemen, but he's doing it anyway. So he sent a letter. You have 2 months. And what happens when Iran calls their bluff? Do it. Do it. Do it. Do your bombing run. See what happens. Do your bombing run. I think Iran, believe it or not, is a blind spot for the U.S. on some level. When they were flying that drone the first time that Donald Trump was in office, and they shot it out the sky, and the U.S. was like, oh my God, I didn't realize that they could hit a drone that high. Why didn't you realize that? Why didn't you realize that? And as I was talking to Morandi pointed out, we are preparing for a conflict with Israel, and we are preparing ourselves, meaning beefing up military capability. I would imagine that with the missile deal, or let's say with the security agreement with Russia, they have probably modernized the air defense system with one of the best air defense systems in the world. Now, you can undercut that. You can ignore that, but you ignore that at your own peril. Trump will destroy his presidency if he does this. He will fundamentally destroy his presidency. I would predict that the economic system, especially around the issue of oil, would decimate the U.S. economy. And you think that people are pissed off now where Donald Trump is like, yeah, I know the stock market has fallen apart. The S&P has dropped all of these points, but hey, whatever, man. Or I understand that people are paying more for cars, but so what? I don't care. I'm Donald Trump. I'm rich. Okay, what happens when oil shoots through the roof? When economic output in the United States start to look like economic output in Germany, when they stop using Russian fuel, I think their prices went up like 60-70%. Good luck with that assessment. The best assessment is Trump is out of his goddamn mind if he's doing this. And why is he doing this? What is the motivation for doing this? Who are they threatening? They're not threatening the United States. This has everything to do with Israel. This has nothing to do with America. And the notion that an American first president is even countenance or even thinking about doing this is a betrayal. It is a betrayal of his oath. It is a betrayal of what he said on the campaign trail. And it is a betrayal of the American public in full. He should be impeached if Donald Trump did something like this. It is outrageous. The notion that you're going to go on a bombing run for the sake of another country is outlandish. It's outlandish. And I'll go further. The notion that your analysis of it is, oh, we'd kick their ass, is ridiculous. It's ridiculous. Trump has been, but see, I never really expected anything from Trump. The only thing I expected from Trump was hopefully that he ended the Ukraine war. At this point, it doesn't seem like he has the capability of doing it. All things being equal, it is easy to get into wars. It is very difficult to extricate yourself from them. And right now, he seems to be stuck in a war that he doesn't want to be in. It is fascinating. I want to move to another story. I'll go to this one. This is eye candy, I guess. This is fascinating. We're learning more back channel stuff of what was happening in that election with Harris and with Trump, but more so between Joe Biden, Harris, Obama, and Nancy Pelosi, and all these other people. If you remember, you had the situation where they ate Joe Biden alive. When Joe Biden had that debate, and people said, oh my God, he can't run. He can't run. Not just he can't run. We think he may break a hip shuffling off stage. He cannot be our lead person. And immediately, all of these Democrats flipped out. The media was like, oh my God, we've been lied to. There's gambling in this establishment. We didn't know anything about it. And I'm saying that to say, because for all of the people like me who are saying, he is clearly not in his right mind. And the media was like, those are deep fakes. Those are deep fakes. Jake Tapper chastised one of the Republicans, I believe it's a Republican, who pointed out that Joe Biden wasn't in his right mind. Joe Biden was melting like a candle as we watched him. And Jake Tapper was like, nope, deep fakes. How dare you say that? Are you a doctor? Then Jake Tapper turns around and writes the book on Joe Biden losing his mind. Okay. Week after week after week, it seemed like there was a whisper campaign that got louder and louder and louder to the point where it just became a scream. And Joe Biden comes out and says, look, bitterly, I cannot run under this level of scrutiny. I'm calling it a day. And was very pissed off at Nancy Pelosi and Obama, who he believed put a knife in him. And he's probably right. But he needed to. He was out of his mind, right? He tells Kamala Harris when she finally takes over, and before we even get to that, there's drama about that. Because Obama, his plan was, we have a fight at the convention. Meaning we have people run and a choice is made at the convention where they have an old-fashioned fight at the convention, at the DNC convention. But this happened first. This happened first. So the reporting is done. Listen to what they say took place behind the scenes that ended up with Joe Biden coming out effectively pushing Harris to the forefront.
John, give me the play-by-play of that conversation between Joe Biden and Kamala Harris when he tells her that he's dropping out of the race.
Biden calls Jim Clyburn, who's in South Carolina, I believe celebrating his birthday, and tells him and says, listen, I've got a statement I'm going to get out. And he reads the statement and Clyburn goes, there's a problem with your statement. Biden's like, what is it? And he goes, you don't mention Kamala Harris. You're going to have to endorse her.
Wait, I will replay this from jump. I just want to point something out. When Joe Biden was trying to get South Carolina, if you remember, Joe Biden was running against Sanders. Sanders had taken the first several states. They go into South Carolina. Massive Black population in that state. Clyburn is considered the Black whisperer for whatever reason. And Joe Biden goes to Clyburn because he wants his support. Clyburn points out, hey, you need to choose a Black VP woman for that spot. Now, Stacey Abrams wanted the job. Kamala Harris ends up getting the nod for the job. It wasn't that she was necessarily qualified. It was more so that Clyburn just wanted her for the job. So the reason why Clyburn is taking this point of view has everything to do with what took place when Joe Biden was running the first time around. Just want to point that out. I'm going to go back to it. I'm going to start it from scratch. Just so you can hear it. I just wanted to give a little factoid associated with it.
John, give me the play-by-play of that conversation between Joe Biden and Kamala Harris when he tells her that he's dropping out of the race.
Biden calls Jim Clyburn, who's in South Carolina, I believe celebrating his birthday, and tells him and says, listen, I've got a statement I'm going to get out. And he reads the statement, and Clyburn goes, there's a problem with your statement. Biden's like, what is it? And he goes, you don't mention Kamala Harris. You're going to have to endorse her. And Biden says, well, yeah, I'm going to I'll eventually endorse her, but I'm going to leave my statement as is. And Clyburn's like freaking out. He's like, I don't know what to do. He wants to be able to endorse Kamala Harris himself immediately. He needs Biden to get out of the race before he can do that. He's got a 5:30 p.m. phone call set up with Barack Obama. He knows Obama's going to push him to support this, this contested primary open convention idea. And he wants to be able to tell Obama to go pound sand. So in order to do that, he has to have already endorsed Harris himself. So ultimately, that's what Clyburn does. And it's ultimately what Biden does. Biden puts out the first statement. Then about half an hour later, he puts out the second statement, launching the Harris campaign's effort to lock down all these delegates. And then Clyburn gets on the phone with Obama at 5:30 p.m. and says, Mr. President, I have already endorsed Kamala Harris. You need to get behind the vice president. It has to be her. And then their phone call lasts less than a minute, helping foil Barack Obama's plans to have this open convention. Like a wild day, never reported at the time that Harris was ready to launch that whip operation, never reported at the time that she had to beg Joe Biden to issue an endorsement the same day. If he doesn't do it, disaster for her.
I was always wondering what happened between that half hour, when we were all on our toes.
Kamala Harris had to beg Joe Biden for nomination because Joe Biden, in his first speech, didn't include Kamala Harris. Clyburn had to push Joe Biden to put her name in order to preempt Obama, meaning Clyburn preempted Obama's plan. Again, let me go back a little bit. David Axelrod, if you remember, was the one to come out and point out, I don't think Joe Biden should be the person. And people were like, whoa, Axelrod is doing that? Is Axelrod doing that on his own? Or is Obama doing a whisper campaign? Now, as I was pointing out to my mom, Obama would never come out and make let's say, an announcement like that. He would never attack Joe Biden in that way. So he wouldn't personally do it. He would never tar himself in that way. Would he work behind the scenes to do it? Oh, yes, he would. Oh, yes, he would. He's a politician, right? Axelrod comes out, whispers, maybe Joe Biden shouldn't be the person. And then people are like, okay, well, what's going on with this? Then for whatever reason, that debate is held early, very, very early. And Joe Biden takes the debate. Voices get louder. Axelrod gets louder. Other people get louder, louder and louder, up until the point where Joe Biden flames out. Obama, in his mind, we can have a contested convention. They can fight it out. We can get the best candidate at the convention. Now that Joe Biden is out, we can do that. Clyburn knows it. Clyburn knows exactly what Obama wants to do. Clyburn wants to ensure that his person that he got Joe Biden to choose is the nominee. We need this Black woman to run. And what does it look like if this Black woman is not chosen? Does she look like she's incompetent? Does she look like she's insufficient for the job? And so Clyburn is like, I need to preempt what Obama wants to do. And the way I preempt what Obama wants to do is to get Joe Biden to nominate and give his support vocally to Kamala Harris. That way, if Obama or anybody else comes out, it is too late. At that point, you're running against the president of the United States, who's effectively said, this is the person who I want to run. That is amazing. That is amazing. That wasn't reported, by the way. That is astonishing. And then add to this, when Kamala Harris was at the debate, and over again, people kept asking, why is she tethering herself this closely to Joe Biden when Joe Biden is this unpopular? And as the reporting points out, Joe Biden told her when she was going out, no daylight, kid. No daylight. Meaning, protect my legacy. I don't give a shit what you do. Protect my legacy. You will back my policies. You will vocally advocate for my policies. You will support that genocide. Yes, you will. You will support that war in Ukraine. You will support all of that stuff. And you would not say a bad word against me. So when over and over again, when Kamala Harris was asked the question of, how are you different than Joe Biden? She said, well, obviously, I'm a woman. I clearly have breasts and a vagina. And I'm not Donald Trump. And people are like, Joe Biden is super unpopular. How are you like wrapping yourself around this unpopularity in this way? And yet she did. From her point of view, loyalty mattered more. At the very least, she wanted to win the race in the context of that loyalty. Dude, talk about focusing on the wrong syllable. You're focusing on the wrong things. The entire point of a race is to win the race. It's like, I'll give you an example. When I see these commercials for the military, and I see them say, we have all of these identity politics in our military. And I'm like, dude, you're missing the point of the military. The point of the military is to kill. Your job is to go out, accomplish an objective. That's it. It's not about accomplishing an objective while ensuring wokeness. It is to accomplish an objective. And if you need a bunch of hardcore Marines to go out there and do it, you have a bunch of hardcore Marines to do it. It has nothing to do with your identity. It's nothing to do with this woke stuff. It is a job to do. Full stop. I don't care about your wokeness. There's a job to do. Same thing, right? You have a political campaign where your objective is to win. And instead of them focusing on how do we win? How do we beat the stuffing out of a man who we're calling Hitler and a fascist and saying he's going to destroy American democracy? Instead of focusing on that. And by the way, if indeed they thought that, and they are still deciding, but we still need to ensure Joe Biden's feelings are okay. Oh man, that is even worse. Clyburn, behind the scenes, put a knife in Obama in order to get Kamala Harris to run in that race, flame out and lose, even worse than Hillary Clinton. Not only did Trump win, he won the popular vote, which is something that Democrats thought Republicans could never do. Meaning Democrats believed, going back to, I think, the 90s or something, that they had an identity lock. Meaning because they were dealing with all these minorities and everything else, that the share of the white vote, share of the minority vote, that trends in the Democratic direction, demographics alone would allow them to win in perpetuity the presidency. And that a Republican, even if they won, would not be able to win based on the popular vote. They would only be able to win by the Electoral College. Trump showed that not to be true. You can say 1% all you want, but again, that is 1% in the context of believing that they can never win the popular vote. They cared more about ensuring Joe Biden's feelings. They cared more about stuff that didn't matter as opposed to actually running a race and winning that race. That reporting is phenomenal. That reporting is phenomenal. That reporting is phenomenal. Mr. Ripley, can you beat Putin in chess? Yes. I'll fuck him up in chess. And by the way, I will say that to anybody. So, take it with a grain of salt. Take it with a grain of salt. That is amazing. That story is amazing. The guy who's reporting that often gets these really good scoops. And this is a damn good one. This is a damn good one. How do you do that? Right? How do you run in a race against a man who you call a fascist, who you say is going to put Liz Cheney against a wall and shoot her? Like, this is the stuff, the rhetoric that they were effectively using when they were running that race, and yet did not want to do what it takes to actually win that race. And instead, were concerned about people's feelings, how they felt, how it looks, as opposed to actually doing the hard work of getting down and doing whatever it takes to beat the stuffing out of Donald Trump. That story is amazing. That story is super amazing. I was mind blown when I heard that. Not shocked. Just like, Jesus, how are you guys missing the boat in this particular fashion? I want to move on. There is a story by Ryan Grimm that's fantastic. It's about Bukele. I don't really want to do the story because I don't feel like I can do it justice. And I would prefer to have a guest to do it. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to have a guest to do it. In fact, the Diego Garcia story, I'm going to hit Daniel McAdams to get him to come on the show to talk about that story. I will hit this story, though. This is disgusting. Under normal circumstances, when Israel goes on a killing spree, it's not reported in the way that it needs to be reported. Oftentimes, they would have it sanitized. You can look at the New York Times talking about this exact story, and they don't report it honestly. So the Associated Press is actually reporting this, thankfully. Israel murdered 12 medics, executed, execution style. And we know it's execution style because there's radio chatter that talks about, hey, get restraints. And effectively, we're going to put them up against a wall. They executed 12 medics. These people are like doctors. And after executing them, dug a mass grave, dumped their bodies in the mass grave, bulldozed it as if, it never actually happened. The story is amazing. And by the way, not uncommon. It's not the most shocking thing in the world that they've been doing. Right here.
This is Romeo. 2, this is Romeo 1. I'm just going to check to see if there's any human remains in here, just so wait out.
I suppose this is them finding the human remains at this point. I'm going to read through. I'm going to read through the article. Mass graves of responders have been found in Rafah after the Israeli strike. According to UN, Israeli killed 15 Palestinian paramedics and rescue workers, one by one, execution style. Palestinian Red Crescent Society and civil defense teams recovered the bodies of the PRC paramedics, the civil defense workers, and one UN staff member from a mass grave in Rafah, Gaza, marked only by emergency light of a crushed ambulance. 7 days earlier, an Israeli force advanced 10 PRCS and 6 civil defense first responders were dispatched to rescue the wounded. All 5 ambulances, a fire truck, and later arriving UN vehicle were struck and contact was lost. So think of it like this. Something happens, responders go, and they attack it again in order to destroy and kill the responders. All right, let's keep going. Might as well show it since you can't see it. One survivor reported Israeli forces executed both medics in his ambulance. Despite repeated coordination efforts, access was only granted 5 days later. En route, teams witnessed civilians fleeing under gunfire, including a woman shot in the head and a man killed while trying to reach her. Her body was retrieved using the UN vehicle. Upon reaching the site the next day, they found the ambulance and the fire truck, the UN vehicle, crushed and partially buried. After hours of digging, they recovered the first body beneath the fire truck. The rest were found on the first day of Eid. Still in uniform, wearing gloves, inside the market vehicles, killed on their way to save lives. They murdered these people. They executed them. And in the reporting, they point out that they knew it was execution style because apparently one of them was talking on the walkie-talkie as it was effectively taking place. I want to make a point about this. I used to ask the question, What is the point? You have, what, nearly 2 million people in Gaza. I don't know how many in the West Bank. What is the point of continuously killing and shuffling these people from point A to point B? I didn't quite get it. My thing was, okay, well, you've destroyed everything that was there. You've done that. You've killed scores of people, tens of thousands at this point, probably over 100,000 people at this point. Okay, you did that. You destroyed all of the buildings. You destroyed the hospitals. You destroyed the UN buildings. You've effectively made life radically unlivable for the people who are in that region. You've done that. The rub is that Netanyahu has started to say the quiet part out loud. Now that Donald Trump is in office, he doesn't seem to give too many F's about effectively being honest about what the purpose and the goal and objective of the Israeli military in their assaults are. Right? Where is it? Right here. Netanyahu points out I have this clip, and then for whatever particular reason, I didn't pull this up because I wasn't necessarily going to hit the story. But he is no longer hiding the ball. Right here. Right here. So this. We will see to the general security in Gaza Strip and will allow the realization of the Trump plan for voluntary migration. This is the plan. We're not hiding this, and we are ready to discuss it at any time. We're not hiding it. There's no hiding the ball. It's not about Hamas. It's not about anything else. We want your land. That's what we want. And we need you to leave. And the only way we can get you to leave, because you've been here for 70 years and you've decided that you don't want to leave, the only way we can do it is through death. You either stay, you either die, get raped, or get murdered. One or the other. It's up to you. You can starve to death. You can get dragged into one of our prisons. Those are things that are available to you if you stay. Otherwise, leave. That's the point. Meaning, for the people who are online and who are making this argument like, oh, this is a military campaign with no purpose. That is not true. The military campaign has a clear political purpose. The political purpose is to make life so inhospitable that they leave, that they effectively walk. Now, if the people stay, from Netanyahu's point of view, you stay and you die. That's it. Those are your options. Leave or die. We will kill, we will maim, we will destroy your children and women. We will throw you in a prison camp. We will rape you on camera. We will do whatever we want. We will use you as human shields. The Trump administration is perfectly okay with all of it. You either stay and die, or you leave. Those are your options. That's what the president, that is what the prime minister is saying. We're not hiding this. There's no point in hiding this anymore. We're not hiding this. We have our moment. We have our window. We're taking our window. And so that is what we are going to do. We're going to utilize the window that Donald Trump gave us in order to kill and maim, and under the guise of a ceasefire deal, rest our forces, load up with more weapons, get larger weapons, and now we're going to go back and we're going to bomb the shit out of anybody that is there. That is our goal. That is our objective. It's very clear. We're very straightforward about it. The execution style is very Nazi-ish, right? All of this is very Nazi-ish. It has the air of Nazi Germany in the way that they effectively operated, where they kill without impunity, where life didn't matter in the least. I don't care that you're a human being. You're a dog. You're a rat. You're an animal. That's the way I'm going to treat you. That's the way I'm going to talk about you. That is the way we're going to talk about you in Parliament. That is where we're going to talk in the open about you. Okay, well, when you have a fascist government that is willing to denigrate human beings to such a degree, why wouldn't they do this? They have done this in front of the eyes of the world. The world has watched and has done squat. What stops them from doing this? The answer is nothing. God will not get involved. Allah will not get involved. There will be no thing that gets involved short of human will in order to stop them from behaving this way. But there is no human will that is willing to do it. So these are people who have a value less than zero, effectively inhuman, because any human being under normal circumstances, ideally, wouldn't necessarily be treated in this way. I think this is where Mark gets into the Leviathan thing, that people without a state are vulnerable to effectively this level of treatment. These are people effectively without a state, without power. And the world doesn't care. Oh, they would whine and they would, shake their hands and they would gyrate and they would complain. But in reality, nothing gets done as we watch all of it. It's not even hidden. The prime minister is not even behind the ball. He's coming out saying, all right, hey, you need to leave or you're going to die. Leave or die. Those are your options. Leave or die. There is no number three. There is no number three. We are creating a greater Israel. And Donald Trump has allowed us the ability to do so. And so while the iron is hot, we're going to take that iron. And by the way, Democrats were the same way. He could have said this under Joe Biden. Joe Biden wouldn't have did squat. He could have done this under Joe Biden. Joe Biden wouldn't have said squat. And Kamala Harris, same thing. Any random Democrat, same thing. So you have a political system that is effectively either bought or uses Israel as its proxy in order to create greater Israel under the guise of the idea that Israel itself is influencing and affecting the United States. I don't know which one it is. Some people argue both ways. Either way, I'm pointing out that the prime minister of our country is effectively ethnically cleansing in the open. The idea that it's voluntary migration when you are murdering people in mass is outrageous. If we had an ethical government, a moral government, and I got to be honest, I came to a different assessment of this. What is the thing that prevents people from acting this way? Normally, it's a reckoning. Normally, it's things happen in a way where there are consequences that come back to bite you in the ass when you behave in such ways. And knowing that there will be consequences on some level steadies your hand. It slows you down. That's not happening here. That's not happening here. To make it even worse, Netanyahu comes out, gives a speech talking about the influence that Israel has in America, where the First Amendment no longer matters. No, I'm serious. And effectively saying, hey, we have influence in America where we have effectively coddled or cowed the First Amendment, where we can now go after people who are pointing out that we're committing a genocide.
Demonstrators. Who are they demonstrating for? For these murderers, these rapists, these mass killers. This is a reflection of a deep rot that has pervaded the intellectual hub of free societies. And this vilification of Israel, the Jewish people, and Western values has been propagated by
the way, this has nothing to do with Jewish people. Many of the people who are getting beat, they were out there protesting, especially in New York City and some of these Washington, D.C. and some of these other places, were Jews. Many of them were Jews. These are Israelis. These are Zionists. There's a very different distinction between these things. I don't even use the term Jews when I'm talking about this. I use the term Israelis. It's a state. It's a country. I criticize the country for effectively having an open-air ghetto and a concentration camp where they are murdering people in mass without any consequence associated with it. Just to be clear. Also, everything that he said there, Israel has been caught raping. I mean, and the number of rapes that the Israeli soldiers have committed is astonishing. And yeah, the New York Times pointed out that they couldn't find any of these rapes according to that they attribute to Hamas. As for murderers, the idea that a flagrant fathead liar like that will come out and say something like that when they have murdered over 100,000 innocent women and children, or let's say 2/3 of which were women and children. is profound. It's profound. Like, there's a level of habitual lying that Netanyahu has done over the course of his career, where he is known to be a habitual liar, and that can stand there and bear the weight, the Herculean weight of those lies, and do so almost as if he's a superhuman being to able to take on the weight of those lies. Morality doesn't matter, ethics doesn't matter, legalities doesn't matter. He may be going to jail for another issue, but before he gets put in a cage, which I hope he does, or at the very least burned in hell, the notion that he's going to come out and give a speech like this when he and his government are committing every crime that he has effectively thrown at Hamas is mind-blowing, and yet expected. No fascist murderer owns it, honestly. They don't. Look at Trump. When Trump talks about, oh, I'm keeping my promise to the Muslim community as he bombs Yemen and murders women and children. And he's like, we've destroyed Yemen's capability as Yemen continues to fire missiles into the Red Sea. Lying comes with the program. Don't believe what these people say. These people are flagrant liars. Morality, they're amoral to the truth. It doesn't matter to them. They say whatever they need to say to get from point A to point B, or to make whatever point they want to make. Reality doesn't matter. I just want to point that out. Let's keep going.
Systemic alliance between the ultra-progressive left and radical Islam. It must be resolutely fought by civilized societies to safeguard their future. This is why we must all commend President Trump's decisive actions against anti-Semitism, and we must pressure other governments to do the same.
A government can do in 2 months more than any organization could do in its lifetime. And so when we talk about the importance of a bipartisan fight against anti-Semitism, which of course I endorse, and I, as my predecessor said, I condemn anti-Semitism.
We have a First Amendment in this country, or at the very least we used to. And the notion that you are cracking down on protesters that have a First Amendment right to protest in this country is anti-American. I don't give a shit about the state of Israel. I care about America. I live here. And all things being equal, from the standpoint of First Amendment rights, the notion that you are chucking people out of the country because they decide to protest a foreign government, that is outrageous. Now, he told you he was going to do that when he was running. So the people who effectively voted for him knowing that this was going to be the case. What is that comedian name? I can't think of his name. That comedian who's been critical of Donald Trump. He's been bitching about Trump. And he's like, man, if he attacks Iran, I'm going to feel very, I'm going to regret that vote. Dude, what were you looking at? What were you looking at? He told you who he was. You saw who he was the first time around. And no, I didn't vote for Kamala Harris, nor did I vote for Donald Trump because I didn't want that nonsense on my conscience. But the reality of it is, I let that shit play out. I have no dog in this hunt. It is what it is. Americans can vote for who they want. I don't want to be a part of it. He is now bitching remorselessly about his vote for Donald Trump and is now worried that Donald Trump is effectively going to end his presidency by attacking Iran. And it's like, where were you during the campaign? Where were you? How did you not know that this was the person you were going to get? Getting $100 million from Miriam Adelson. Okay, why is she giving him that money? She's giving him that money because she wanted Donald Trump to annex the West Bank. Well, whether he was going to annex the West Bank or not, he told you he was going to have these crackdowns on free speech. He told you that this was going to be part of his policy prescription. How are you now confused? Can't think of his name. Can't think of his name. It's like, you're a fucking idiot. Like the notion that you look now and be like, I'm shocked that Donald Trump is doing this. Why? 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 It was clear he was going to have an Israeli first policy when he was running. He said it was going to be an Israeli first policy, despite the fact that he kept saying it was going to be America first. All of these things are anti-American. I would even go so far as to say the attack on Iran is not for America. That is for a foreign government. Again, anti-American. All of these things are anti-American while running under the guise of America first. Netanyahu is sitting there bragging that they are cracking down on free speech in America under the guise of anti-Semitism. These Nazis are committing a genocide. And he's like, how dare you claim and point out the fact that we're committing a genocide as we commit a genocide. And we don't like the fact that you're pointing out that we're committing a genocide as we take pictures of ourselves committing atrocities. Sure. We watch it every day on social media. We see them do this stuff. We are completely impotent as they do this stuff. And yeah, it's disturbing, I put it that way, that a US president will be so obsequious to a foreign government in the way that he is. For all this talk about Trump is obsequious to Russia, Russia is invading our elections. Nonsense. Israel dumped $100 million into our elections. They literally bought various candidates in regards to getting rid of Jamal Bowman and what is that other woman? I can't think of her name. And even trying to get rid of Thomas Massie because he just so happens to be a Republican that is consistent. It's humiliating. It's embarrassing. And more than anything else, it is radically anti-American that you would work with a foreign government in order to crack down on issues of free speech. These people at the campus aren't being anti-Semitic. Get the fuck out of here. They are protesting, as they should, what they see as an atrocity that is being committed in our name with our tax dollars, where Joe Biden was given 70 to 80% of everything that they were effectively doing, meaning every Palestinian that they murdered, every person that they killed, every bomb that they dropped, our name, our tax dollars that we're doing. And Donald Trump is continuing that trend. Donald Trump is continuing that trend. To call it outrageous is a Herculean understatement. There are no words to describe how grotesque this is. I can't imagine Nazis taking photos of themselves as they committed atrocities in the way that the Israelis do. And yeah, the same thing is true for Syria, by the way, who we also assisted getting a jihadist in a position of authority in Syria. And then he cut his beard and he's like, hey, I know I used to be a head chopper in my youth, but you know, I've changed, I've reformed. I no longer chop heads. I no longer have that, that need to chop a man's head off. I no longer have the need to do that. That's not what I need to do. Now, unfortunately, many of the people under him still have that need, in which case they've been going door to door, murdering Alawites, Christians, other religious minority sects, because apparently they're not deserving of God's love. And even more fascinating, as they do it. Woo, watch me beat the shit out of this child. Bam. Hold the camera. Buck. Kicking a 9-year-old. Beating the shit out of a 9-year-old on camera. Shooting somebody on camera. And Jelani, the best thing he could do is like, hey, guys, can you please just not do this on camera? Okay. We won't do this on camera. And so we will now do it silently. These are the people we support. It's outrageous. This is our government. This is what we've been putting money into. And yeah, I know Istanbul had a lot to do with it, but understand the United States have been trying to get rid of Assad for decades. Obama spent billions of dollars trying to overthrow the Assad government. And people like me would say, when Assad goes, what do you think happens? Well, what happens is what is happening now, a silent murder spree where they are ethnically cleansing Alawites, Christians, etc. This is our government. This is our government. This is our government. This is the shit that we do. It is outrageous. It is absolutely outrageous. I want to go to another one, the mustachio man himself. Mustachio man himself. We have a few minutes. Kimberly should be joining us soon. So I'll go into this real quick. John Bolton has feelings about Donald Trump. He has feelings about Donald Trump. And the mustachioed man is very angry that Donald Trump seems to have given Putin everything he wanted. This is John Bolton. Now keep in mind, John Bolton is a lunatic. He's understood to be a lunatic. I don't even know why people still talk to John Bolton, but they still talk to John Bolton. Weirdly enough, he's still a thing. John
No NATO member
is complaining, hey, Donald Trump gave Putin everything he wanted. Now, my question to John Bolton would be, what would you do about it? How would you change any of this situation around? In fact, I'm not going to get this far. I'm going to go to Megan. She's here. Let me kill this. I am joined with the lovely, the fantastic, the awesome Margaret Kimberly. Margaret Kimberly, she is senior columnist and editor for Black Agenda Report, author of Presidential, Black America, and the Presidents. Margaret Kimberly, welcome to the show. How you doing today? You doing all right?
I'm doing good, thanks.
I have just finished an angry rant about this idea that Netanyahu is saying the quiet part out loud, effectively saying, hey, you people can voluntarily deport. We're not hiding this anymore. This is the plan. We can talk about it. It's like, okay, how are we going to have a conversation about you killing me and me being forced out under the guise of voluntary deportation? It's upsetting, that's all. And the notion that our government is effectively paying for this is outrageous to me. But
well, it is. Thank you so much. It's I always remind people this did not start with Trump. This U.S. Backing of genocide began with Biden, and Trump is.
Let's dig into that. Let's dig into that. I'm glad we start there. All right, liberals have been screaming that Donald Trump is an anomaly. You've had a lot of people who've been online who said Donald Trump is super grotesque. I'm one of those people who says grotesque. But I don't think he's an anomaly, though. Give me your take on this. Is he the fullest expression of, let's say, a Republican? Is he the fullest expression? Give me your take on Trump. You wrote the book on presidents in Black America. Give me your take.
Well, my take on Trump is that he is somewhat of an aberration, but not completely. So he is trying to radically reshape government. He has majorities in both houses of Congress. He is ruling, though, and it is rule, it's not governing, by executive order. Presidents have, yes, the power of executive orders, but they can't do everything by executive order. So he's dismantling agencies that Department of Education, USAID, that were created by Congress. And if Congress votes to dismantle them, that's the only way it should happen. But he's giving the full expression of every right-wing fantasy, from getting rid of the Department of Education to doing away with the veneer of USAID. Yes, it has been involved in these regime change plots, but that's because it's a charitable agency, provides aid, food aid, and other aid to people all over the world, which made it a good cover for the regime change plots. However, getting rid of it means there's suffering in many parts of the world, but he doesn't care. He's also, there's an element of revenge for all those, the criminal cases that he went through after he left office. That's why he attacked the law firm of Paul Weiss, a former partner, not even a partner at the time, was involved in his prosecution. So he takes revenge on Paul Weiss, and they knuckle under, and Columbia University knuckled under. So you can say everything negative about Trump. I'm not going to argue against it, but we see the liberal order giving into him completely. So then how much of an aberration is he if these allegedly if big law firms and Ivy League schools do whatever he wants them to do? So that's my take in general about Trump and how different he is. As for this situation in Gaza, It's just horrible. After Israel murders emergency workers, and actually it's not the first time they've done that. The little girl Hind Rajab, who was killed with her family, they killed the aid workers who came to save her. And I could go on. They're not the only one. This is not the first time this has happened.
No.
But it began with Biden giving Israel everything it wanted, being committed to this genocide. He is carrying on Biden's legacy. And as far as them saying, yeah, this is ethnic cleansing, well, duh, dare I say. But this is a message to Jordan and Egypt, U.S. client states who so far have refused. They have said they want 2 million people to leave Gaza. Both Egypt and Jordan have said no. It's going to disrupt their societies to have 1 million people suddenly show up who will radicalize their populations. A lot of these Arab countries do openly or covertly do business with Israel. Their people don't want it, though. So you have these, turncoat leaders, but their people don't want it. And to have Gazans show up and expose the treachery of these countries is something they can't take a chance on. So this is to pressure them into taking people. If you don't take them in, we're going to kill everybody. Quickly or slowly, we're going to do that. That's Israel's message, and that's Trump's message as well. And this was bipartisan. So it's easy for people to just point at Trump and say, oh, this is so evil, this is so terrible. Biden sent billions of dollars to help Israel commit ethnic cleansing, and it was completely bipartisan. So in this regard, Trump is no different.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. I want to go to the universities for a bit. Columbia University, as you pointed out, just knuckled under. And I think it was Johns Hopkins that effectively told their staff, hey, if agents come in, don't help anybody, don't hide anybody, don't try to let anybody go. Just, cower down and let them do it. The level of cowardice in these organizations is astonishing. And I think about, and no, I'm not comparing this to Nazi Germany, but I'm going to compare it to Nazi Germany a bit. You wonder how institutions effectively dealt with a rabid government that was breaching authority. In this case, Donald Trump is pushing presidential power and authority to the max in a way that I've never seen, right? And the universities and institutions that you think would be like, no, we're going to let our kids protest. It's a college campus. Of course, they have the right to do that. Or Johns Hopkins, no, we're not going to let you disappear people like you were doing, sending these people to El Salvador when they weren't even from El Salvador. We're not going to involve our people in that for whatever random reason that you come up with. Instead, they bow their heads. They bow their heads. They just bend the knee, do whatever you need to do. That is amazing to me.
Well, I think about Columbia. I don't know about Johns Hopkins, but Columbia, I've seen figures of $13 billion, $14 billion endowment. What is it for? It's a big landowner in Manhattan. All the property around Columbia University, billions of dollars in property, is owned by Columbia. It's a deep-pocketed institution. If anyone could afford to take Trump on, it was them. So he took $400 million. They could have replaced it. But, as someone says, these colleges are hedge funds with education as a side hustle. I wish I could credit whoever said that. But of course, they've proven it to be true. So we see the liberal order has been exposed little by little in the acquiescence to this genocide. And then when they are we saw it with Columbia last year when the city of New York, the NYPD came and arrested student, and one officer shot his gun, apparently accidentally, but could have killed someone. They didn't say anything to Eric Adams, the mayor, to his administration. They said nothing, absolutely nothing. So they have been giving in. And now when you have someone like Trump who comes in with the sledgehammer, they just have, they're continuing what they had been doing in this regard. So we see that we're on our own. Big law firms, fancy schmancy colleges, they all give in. These federal judges who, I don't know what this guy Boasberg is waiting for. His questions imply that he knows the administration lied to him about taking people, these Venezuelans, to El Salvador. He said, you can't take them out, and they did. We've seen other instances. A student at Tufts University in Massachusetts, who there's a video of her being snatched off the street by ICE officers. And the judge said, don't take her out of Massachusetts. Well, they did, and there's no price to pay. So these judges are afraid to be, somebody's got to be the first one to cite somebody in the Trump administration for contempt of court, but nobody wants to be the first one. And so we see the system exposed for what it is. And however people resist and respond, it has to be with the knowledge that it's us. It's just us.
Yeah. I think those judges realize that they don't have a military, they don't have a police force. And under normal circumstances, what they're effectively functioning under is that people would fall in line because it's a court. And what happens when the administration just says, I don't care? What do? It's that part. What do? If Trump just says, I'm sending them out the country anyway, do you? And the judge says, I'm holding you in contempt. Okay. So what?
But they haven't even done that. And somebody needs to take that chance and do it and see what happens. But no one, they're afraid. Everybody's afraid. And these federal judges, they have lifetime appointments. That's why they have lifetime appointments. So that was the idea behind it. So they wouldn't be beholden to a political party or be afraid to make unpopular rulings. And that can be good or bad, depending on your feelings about how they decide things. But he can't be fired. They can threaten him with impeachment. But the Chief Justice Roberts already told the Trump administration stop talking about impeaching judges. So they can't do that, but somebody's got to be the brave one. And nobody wants to be the brave one. And this is what I've been saying, this Hitler comparison. And I always say, if you have a weak liberal class, then you have fascism. And we're seeing it. And if Trump is a dictator, if he's a Hitler-like character, then what is Colombia? Then what is Paul Weiss? What are they? If he's Hitler, then aren't they Nazis? I mean, if you really want to use that comparison, that analogy, then you have to say that they are the same.
Speaking of that, this came up. Now, I don't know how serious he is about this, but I am going to play it just because it is getting airplay and I want to get your take on it. This is a bit rich considering it was Republicans that led the charge in order to keep FDR off the ballot. Meaning, when FDR died in office, they were like, okay, no más, no more. Are we going to live in this situation where a dominant president is able to stay in power for this long? And then Trump comes out and says this.
Story, I know it's hypothetical right now, but if you were allowed for some reason to run for a third term, is there a thought that the Democrats could try to run Barack Obama against you?
I'd love that.
For his third term?
Boy, I'd love that. That would be a good one. I'd like that. No, people are asking me to run, and there's a whole story about running for a third term. I don't know. I never looked into it. They do say there's a way you can do it, but I don't know about that. But I have not looked into it. I want to do a fantastic job. We have 4 years, just about, almost close to 4 years. Time is flying, but it's still close to 4 years. And we're getting a lot of credit for having done a great job in the first almost 100 days. And we have some big things we're going to be announcing over the next 2 days that you know very well, Peter. And I think it's going to be something that's going to bring a lot of wealth back to our country, tremendous wealth back to our country, actually. And
I have no idea what he's talking about. Trump has been tanking the economy ever since. He has been putting in tariffs and everything else. And I know the tariffs are supposed to go into effect a few days, the markets are freaked out and terrified. You have other countries who are like, oh God, he's going to do this. And even getting to the point of saying, hey, you realize cars are going to be more expensive. I don't care. I don't care.
Tariffs are a tax. I mean, if you don't understand anything else, it's a tax. So if there's a tariff on a foreign car, you are paying more for the car or for anything else. And every time he talks about tariffs, as you said, the market tanks and it goes up if he backs off. He's a legend in his own mind. Everything's terrific. The economy is going great. Everything's fine. But I want to say this about him running for a third term or anything else. Everything's legal if no one does anything.
Yes.
Then in effect, it's legal.
Very true. Like, unless somebody says, hey, no, you can't do that, then it's allowed. I always said power is taken, right? If nobody does anything about the fact that you've taken power, you've taken power. He's accruing a lot of power in that administration. I think Obama would beat the stuffing out of him. I could be wrong.
The question is, does Obama want to be president? I mean, Trump's the only person who wants to be president a second time after everything he went through. But he's such a maniac. It's like nobody else, Obama's chilling, making lots of money, giving speeches, getting paid to do very little, having the time of his life. Does he really want to run for president again?
I don't know. I mean, that's a good question. I mean, and then for them to bring up, hey, would you like to run against Obama? I think other Republicans know that Obama would be stuffing out Trump. Trump would be like, what, 85, 86? I mean, like, age. He doesn't look like the age is wearing on him now, even though there are some clips I can play where he seems to be out of his mind. I get this, Obama will beat the stuffing out of him. But to your point, I don't know if Obama would even want to be president again. And yet,
does he want to be? But this also shows you the failure of the Democratic Party, that they had nobody waiting in the wings, that they let Joe Biden try to run again. The fact that Trump is president is the fault of the Democratic Party, 100%. Grandpa wouldn't give up the keys.
Oh, and I got a clip for you. Clip for you. All right, so I found this clip. I did an entire thing on it because it's fascinating to me, and I want to get your take on it. So this goes into how Harris ended up being the nominee and the political intrigue that was taking place behind the scenes as she was being decided, or as it was being decided. It's a little bit long. I'm going to let it play out just a little bit, but I want to get your take on it afterwards. Clyburn, the Black Whisperer, got involved. Let's play it out.
John, give me the play-by-play of that conversation between Joe Biden and Kamala Harris when he tells her that he's dropping out of the race.
Biden calls Jim Clyburn, who's in South Carolina, I believe celebrating his birthday, and tells him and says, listen, I've got a statement I'm going to get out. And he reads the statement, and Clyburn goes, there's a problem with your statement. Biden's like, what is it? And he goes, you don't mention Kamala Harris. You're going to have to endorse her. And Biden says, well, I'm going to leave I'll eventually endorse her, but I'm going to leave my statement as is. And Clyburn's like freaking out. He's like, I don't know what to do. He wants to be able to endorse Kamala Harris himself immediately. He needs Biden to get out of the race before he can do that. He's got a 5:30 p.m. phone call set up with Barack Obama. He knows Obama's going to push him to support this, this contested primary open convention idea. And he wants to be able to tell Obama to go pound sand. So in order to do that, he has to have already endorsed Harris himself. So ultimately, that's what Clyburn does, and it's ultimately what Biden does. Biden puts out the first statement, then about half an hour later, he puts out the second statement, launching the Harris campaign's effort to lock down all these delegates. And then Clyburn gets on the phone with Obama at 5:30 p.m. and says, Mr. President, I have already endorsed Kamala Harris. You need to get behind the vice president. It has to be her. And then their phone call lasts less than a minute. Helping foil Barack Obama's plans to have this open convention. Like a wild day, never reported at the time that Harris was ready to launch that whip operation, never reported at the time that she had to beg Joe Biden to issue an endorsement the same day. If he doesn't do it, disaster for her.
I was always wondering what happened between that half hour.
That is amazing. Just
You know, what's funny to me? All these people who said Black people are demanding that Harris be the one. I do not feel ever that there was that kind of loyalty among Black people for Kamala Harris.
Agreed.
I never thought that was true. And then for these people to say you have to pick her, I mean, I want to say something else. Did you notice at Jimmy Carter's funeral and at the inaugural, Biden and Obama did not speak? It's something that
they were angry. Biden was angry.
Yes, he's mad that they pushed him out, and then they pushed him out and she lost. So he feels vindicated. See, I told you should have left me in. Although I still think he would have lost to Trump. The question was like, who was going to lose to Trump, Biden or Harris?
Yeah.
But this, they knew Biden shouldn't have run again. His even before the debate debacle, his approval ratings were in the basement. They weren't even 50%. That means you can't run again. But he didn't want to go. And I'm sure it had been mentioned to him before. People like David Axelrod were very public, like a year before Election Day. We don't have much time. The president should decide if this is what's best for the country. But Joe wasn't having it. He was saying, I'm not going. Yep. And then he ruined it for everybody.
Well, Clyburn ruined it for everybody.
Yes,
because
he
if
did.
you remember, Obama apparently was like, we want to have a brokered convention, meaning we want to fight this out at the DNC convention. I think Nancy Pelosi was like, we want to fight this out at the DNC convention. Clyburn was like, I'm the one that got Joe Biden to choose Kamala Harris. I want Kamala Harris. I need Joe Biden to back her before I talk to Obama because Obama is going to push for a brokered convention. So Clyburn, if he's right, Clyburn knew that Obama wanted a brokered convention. And he needed to get Joe Biden on his side before he talked to Obama so he could tell Obama it's a done deal. It's already going to be Harris. And he pushes Joe Biden, who didn't have Kamala Harris in his statement. That is amazing. Not only did Clyburn give us Kamala Harris in regards to the vice president, Clyburn was instrumental in getting her to run as president behind the scenes.
And I don't know. And the other thing, I never understood what people saw in her. All I saw was the word salad lady. She couldn't put two sentences together. And I always thought it was very funny. Politicians tend to be very glib and can talk off the cuff easily. And she never, when they first got into office and she was vice president, I said, well, maybe a little time she'll get her feet wet and she never got any better. And I never was impressed. I didn't understand why anybody else was impressed. I think it was the idea of a woman being president, of a biracial woman being president. I guess it was part of the liberal lore, something they were in love with. The rest of the country wasn't, of course. And so I just, this debacle, I wasn't aware of Clyburn's role, but Clyburn, he was a phony kingmaker. That's the other thing. People had always talked about he was this kingmaker, and anybody he endorsed would win the South Carolina primary and blah blah. He's a Democratic Party insider. He endorsed people if they were already the choice of the Democratic Party establishment. And so this idea that he had to get clearance from Clyburn, of all people, Mr. Big Pharma, the man who had got more money from Big Pharma than anyone else in Congress. And it tells you a lot about the failure of Black politics, that this party hack was seen as some kind of a leader, and in the end helped lead the Democratic Party to
ruin. Complete ruin. I mean, because they don't have any political opposition to anything Donald Trump is doing. There's nothing moving in order to push back. I mean, Trump is effectively acting completely unopposed. He's bombing Yemen unopposed. He is destroying Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid unopposed in a de facto way by effectively gutting the workforce. Health and Human Services, RFK Jr., again, destroying it unopposed. There is no political opposition coming out of the Democratic Party that I can see. Sanders is the lone man running around getting 15,000 people. But so what? It's like, so what?
Well,
So
what
what?
is he doing though? What are he and AOC doing? They're trying to sheepdog again, trying to herd leftish Democrats back into the party fold. And for what? We have James Carville saying Democrats should do nothing, which he didn't need to say because they didn't plan to do anything anyhow. So they're hoping to hang on until the midterms and they'll win Congress back. But if you have a president ruling by executive order, it doesn't matter if you have control of the House. So what?
Yeah.
So what?
Yeah.
And
I mean,
none of them are, and people are looking at them, hoping for them to say something. I mean, the only people, some of these Democratic Party attorney generals are filing lawsuits. Who knows how that will work out? But we've seen them ignore judges' orders. So what will that mean? So they're just hoping that Trump actually ruins the country enough that they will win by default. I actually think that's it. And as far as Yemen and other things, they never stand up to presidents. Every president bomb Libya, bomb Yemen, bomb this place, bomb that place. They don't care. They, there's, I think the last declaration actually of a war, was it World War II? Everything else, Congress either, sometimes they have a vote for Iraq or, something phony, the Gulf of Tonkin resolution, but they don't even do that anymore. Presidents just do what they want around the world.
Yeah, there was authorization military force for Iraq, and Obama interpreted the bomb Syria and pretty much everywhere else in the Middle East that he wanted to, Syria, Libya, etc., without any hedge associated with it. People are like, wait a minute, this is Iraq. How are you doing this to these other countries? It's just wild to me.
The thing to me is I find most interesting about Trump is he's treating his own voters just as badly as the people who opposed him.
Yes.
Everybody loves Social Security. Everybody loves Medicare, and he's killing them anyway. And I mean, the fact that they're telling Republican House members not to hold town halls is it tells you a lot about his voters. People voted for him hoping he'd screw somebody else, and he's like, no, I'm screwing everybody.
By the way, there's an election taking place in Florida, and if I'm not mistaken, a Democrat is like, Trump won that place by like 30 points, and a Democrat is winning in that election, which is a bellwether in regards to the public's appraisal of Trump. We'll see how the election turns out, but I think that the economy is going to tank. I think Trump's presidency is going to tank with the economy if it does, or if he attacks Iran, it's over. I think his presidency is over. We'll see. Margaret?
I mean, I don't know. Even if he does want to attack Iran, Israel has wanted the U.S. to attack Iran for years. That will be horrible and a very, very dangerous thing.
Agreed. But 1,000% agreed. We'll see. It's Iran's response that I think is going to be overwhelming, because they've been preparing for this attack for the United States for decades. Ever since the United States attacked Iraq, they have been preparing for this particular attack, knowing that at some point it was going to come. And I would imagine that they will have a response. And, at that point, it's unpredictable, right? Like if they hit the oil fields, if they hit Israel, if they hit the Strait of Hormuz, if they hit the tanks or the ships that are out in the sea nearby that is threatening them, oh man, all hell breaks loose. Like it is a very dangerous plan that Donald Trump is running with. It could be a bluff. If it's a bluff and they call that bluff, he's going to look incompetent. But we'll see. Margaret, thank you for this. I always appreciate talking to you. You're always so informative. Margaret Kimberly, senior columnist and editor for Black Agenda Report and author of Presidential, Black America and the Presidents. Where can people find you? I ask this question to people now because sometimes the bio is out of date. Margaret? Oh, I can't hear you. Are you muted? What's going on? There you are.
No.
Okay. Now I
can hear you. Okay, cool. Yes, blackagendareport.com. We publish every Wednesday. Black Agenda Radio every Friday. I'm on X at Freedom Ride Blog.
Very cool. You have a fantastic day. Thank you for this. I really appreciate it.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. All right. I am going to go to my next guest, the man himself, Michael Maloof. Michael Maloof, there we are. Michael Maloof, if I can pull this up, is a former senior security policy analyst at the Office of the Secretary of Defense, author, regular contributing editor on RT and other media outlets. He has nearly 30 years of federal service experience in the U.S. Department of Defense. Michael, welcome to the show, my man. How you doing this morning? You doing okay?
So far, so good, Jamal. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. I brought you on because I am confused. I am confused. Now, what I'm confused with, and I'll go with this statement by Trump in order to start it. Okay, not this one. I'll give this statement by Trump, and it'll lead into the conversation on why I am confused. Donald Trump said this, and mind you, he is not being truthful in the statement, so don't look for truth in the statement, but he is making a point. And it's the point that I want to get across and get an answer from you on.
Hopefully he's going to live up. I see he's trying to renegotiate the rare earth. We made a deal for rare earth. It was all done. And I heard through you, I haven't spoken to them yet, but through you, I heard that they're now saying, well, I'll only do that deal if we get into NATO or something to that effect. Well, that was never, number one, discussed. Number two, I think it's going to be very long before Putin. They said you're not going into NATO. And it could be, that's probably the reason the war started. You have Zelensky, and hopefully he's...
All right. Now, that is the reason the war started. Let's put a pin on that part. But two things. The rare earth mineral deal that Donald Trump is talking about, he changed that deal. And he made that deal far more onerous to the point where he is effectively getting control of pretty much Ukraine. I mean, anything that comes out of the ground, oil, gas, rare earths, they're calling it a mineral deal, but it's effectively for everything. The money that Joe Biden gave is now a loan that is to be paid back with the deal to, I think, 4% interest. And Ukraine effectively gets none of it until all of it is paid back. And Trump has used the term like $300 billion. This is pretty astonishing. Now, Trump is acting like it's the same deal. This is the deal we agreed upon. It's not the same deal. And I have this question of, okay, is Donald Trump putting this deal out there with the idea that he can force Zelensky somehow into it? Or is he putting it out there with the idea that he knows they're going to turn it down? Now, Zelensky has already gone rogue. He's like, I'm not taking that deal. He ran to Europe immediately. And he was coddled by the Europeans. And he stood there, he's like, I'm not taking the deal. I'm not going to accept it. I have a plan with the Europeans, etc. The Europeans, when Donald Trump asked about the Black Sea Initiative, they said, no, we're not doing it. Meaning we're not relieving sanctions, which means the Black Sea Initiative is going nowhere. So negotiations at this point have gone nowhere because the U.S. hasn't been able to show Russia that they can really accomplish anything in regards to anything for ceasefire. And Zelensky has been violating the ceasefire from day one, almost in repudiation of Trump even putting it out there. Did Trump put this deal out there knowing full well that Zelensky and Narada cannot accept it? And if so, why?
Well, there are many considerations here. As I understand the deal, the amount of money that the U.S. would extract would be probably less than what Trump says is $350 billion. But after that amount, it would be shared, and there would be a fund set up for rebuilding and what have you. The unknown is what minerals and rare earths would there be. I mean, right. that amount. I mean, it's uncertain. In terms of, I think the Trump view is that the minerals deal would be to would in and of itself offer some kind of a security assistance that they're seeking by the mere presence of U.S. presence in Ukraine. That's not. But at the same time, you're hearing Russia say they accept no NATO troops. That would presumably include U.S. Right. Even to protect U.S. investments. A lot of people are pushing for Zelensky to go with the minerals deal because it will ensure some kind of U.S. presence even commercial presence. And at the same time, earlier we heard that even Russia might be interested in, because it contains most of the rare earths in Ukraine, might be interested in a rare earths deal with Trump.
Mhm.
But even that's been held in abeyance, because now it's being overshadowed by something else, and that is the fact that, notwithstanding given the ceasefire that was supposed to kick in, with a respect for not hitting energy infrastructure, there is a continuous effort by the Ukrainians to do just that against Russian energy infrastructure. And Trump is, for some reason, claiming then that Putin's not living up to the deal. Well, it's Zelensky who's not living up to the deal. But I'm beginning to think, first of all, Zelensky cannot afford to negotiate with the Russians in the first place. As I've told you on the air, he'll be dead in 24 hours.
Mhm.
And because you have the Azov group and the other neo-Nazi elements that will want to continue that pressure against Russia. And in fact, even though they're integrated now into the Ukrainian armed forces, they don't necessarily abide by all of the of Kyiv's policies. They have their own agenda, and that's scary. And they will work with Zelensky as long as he conforms to their interests. But the minute that those interests diverge, they're on their own. They're gonna do their own thing, and they're powerful enough to do it, and they've demonstrated that. They're the ones who've been doing the attacks in the Black Sea, and are working primarily with the Brits. The Brits have been training them. I think they were training them in Wales. They have a facility where they've been training them. So so you got the Brits involved in all of this. The Europeans don't want. The Europeans even are talking about, well, if Trump doesn't want to do an energy or a minerals deal, we'll do one. So we're hearing that, but they don't have any money. So they're gonna be interested in such a deal if they can get it going. And maybe that's what Zelensky's holding out for. But as long as he's getting some kind of assurance from the Europeans, and particularly the Brits, that they will be getting backed up with monetary and logistical support for continuing to wage the conflict, Zelensky is in no rush to settle. And that's why I'm beginning to think now that it's not Putin so much. And I think that maybe Putin needs to call Trump directly and explain, here's what's happening. Our energy infrastructure is being hit, and they've been hit with HIMARS and ATACMS and what have you, and it's been identified that it was the Brits and the French who did the targeting and provided the logistical support for that. So the Europeans are preparing and continuing this initiative against Russia, even though Trump wants a more geostrategic realignment with Russia and renewal of diplomatic relations. I don't know why Trump isn't putting pressure on Starmer of Britain and Macron of France to knock it off, but they've made it clear that they're going their own direction as well, and it's also a signal that we may be seeing that fracture in NATO becoming a real fissure. That we're really going to be seeing a divide there, and as a consequence, the Trump's persuasiveness over the allies, NATO allies, is probably becoming less and less probable as a result.
that means that any notion of negotiations have stalled. And
Totally.
Trump doesn't have the capability of ending this war on his own.
You can only go so far. I mean, Trump can be bombastic. He can be appear to be forthcoming with this and working with both sides. But there are too many players involved here, too many uncertainties. If it was just U.S. and Russia, that's one thing. But you have the Europeans, and then you also have Ukraine. They all have their own interests in this, and the U.S. ability, given the friction that exists between the Trump administration and the NATO countries today, is such that that cooperation is not forthcoming, even though most of the hardware that the NATO countries get is from the United States. Now, there is talk the U.S. could really have a adverse impact on Britain's nuclear submarine capabilities, the Trident, because all of their activities have to be done in coordination with the U.S. When it comes to that. So there is that, and also the U.S. can maybe flip a switch on the F-35s that all these countries were forced to buy. So who knows?
That is fascinating to me, because I'm one of those people who are like, why are we selling weapons? I never understood the process of selling weapons. I mean, that's the thing that's used for an advantage. But Trump was like, hey, we have a switch on it where we can just kill it if they try to use it against us.
It's a kill switch. Yeah. But you see, because of standardization, NATO standardization has always meant, in effect, U.S. standards and products throughout all of NATO countries. Now they're all dependent. Now they're beginning to rush around and talk actively about developing their own defense industries now to become independent of U.S. production, military production capabilities for the future. And we're seeing more and more of that.
Is there any other way that Donald Trump could put screws to Europe? I mean, tariffs, I suppose, is one. Like you pointed out, he could destroy their steel industry.
Yeah.
I guess, what if he stops the sale of weapons? Would that do it? Like, meaning, what way can he put the screws to France and Britain to be like, cut it out? I'm not tolerating this.
Well, I don't know that it could have some impact he could do a combination of things. He could increase tariffs. He could economic tariffs and military hardware and access to technology, software, source coding, all that stuff. He could. There are a number of instruments and that he could undertake if he wanted to go after the NATO countries. It doesn't appear that we're there yet. He just had a meeting the other day with Starmer, and he spoke about how they had a great meeting. Okay, it's like every one of his meetings is great. So, but yet their policies, their approach, they have this meeting. They both glorify the meetings, but then they each go in their own direction. It whipsaws you. You don't know from one day to the next whether they're in tandem or they're working against each other. And clearly, the policy direction that we're seeing of Europe is different from that of the United States. They want to rearm and become more independent of the United States, and pursue Ukraine's interests and back them up, while Trump wants to renew ties with Russia for other geostrategic reasons. So he just wants to leave. He just considers Europe not to be their U.S. problem any longer. After all, when you look at the history of U.S. involvement in Europe's wars over the course of centuries, I mean, it gets tiring. I mean, we're continuously fighting their wars, and as I've said in the past, the Europeans just fundamentally are suicidal. They can't help themselves. We're fighting feuds that go back 300 years. Enough, I mean, the Russians, and there's a history of the UK and the Russians going at each other It's more than 200 years old. I mean, it goes back even to U.S. history, where Catherine the Great refused to honor the British blockade of the colonies, U.S. colonies.
Napoleon, if I'm not mistaken, Napoleon invaded because of
It goes back that far, at least that far. So, and they've never forgotten it. I mean, they think the Russians really hampered their imperial destiny, I guess. And at one time, Britain was a major power in the world with its navy, but that's no longer the case. Look, a hypersonic from Russia will hit London in less than 8 minutes. So the warning time is a little different than it used to be 300 years ago. And I think, but yet you have the British still thinking in imperial terms, still thinking that there's some fantastic empire. And I tell my British friends, of the few that I have, look, you're no bigger than the size of Indiana. Get over it.
Yeah. They walk around with that British, I don't know what it is, like arrogance. I don't know what it is. It's like
it's a real false arrogance. It's a false arrogance, and it gets like really boring. It's really boring.
It's bizarre. It's like you look in the mirror with an undeserved sense of importance, even though it's like you're, like you say, no Olympic.
Well, I think to get to your point, I think Donald Trump is at a crossroads now. I don't think he really knows what to do.
Yeah,
and there are allegations that Putin is procrastinating, is stalling purposely. Well, he's got conditions, and his infrastructure is being hit by the Ukrainians. And even Maria Zakharova the other day pointed out it didn't come from the U.S. It came from HIMARS that were initiated by the British and programmed and targeted by the French and the British. So they're taking an independent course. And the British, by the way, do get HIMARS. People say, well, these are HIMARS, these are American. Well, there's a version of HIMARS that the British have. It's a track version. So it's mobile. So and it's like 70, 80 kilometers range. But they have it, and they have that capability. Plus, they have the targeting capability. They have the information that U.S. has in targeting for targeting purposes because they're NATO. So there's that element. And so they're just using it to assist the Ukrainians. And I don't believe the U.S. is involved in that because they've been told to look elsewhere, not at the Russians any longer. So let's see what happens. But clearly, the British and the French are charting their own independent course, and that's something we've got to watch. And I don't think the Trump administration has a response to that as yet.
Putin has to respond to that. I mean, I get it. They're trying to stay with the ceasefire. Fair enough. They think they can.
Well, he did this morning. He basically said, "I have conditions, and they're not being met." He's basically saying that. And Rybkov, one of the deputy foreign ministers, basically said that we want to work with the Americans, but our conditions are not being met.
Yeah,
and they have to be met. So we're at a stalemate. So it's clear that the principals are going to have to get on the horn to each other and work something out. I don't think in the end, despite all the bombastic talk of secondary sanctions, which won't work against the Russians, Trump does not want to irritate or create a schism with Russia at this point. They're too big. They're too big, and they are strategic, and they've got, again, more nuclear weapons than we do, and they can be all over the place if they want to be. They don't have the outreach that we have. They're more of a regional power, but even though we are a world power, but that can be tenuous because our capabilities have been worn down over time, and we haven't replenished, and that's another issue altogether. Can we maintain that vigilance, that world vigilance, with our 12 carrier strike groups?
that
some
can
of the,
be
you know,
stunk.
yeah,
Those
and
things are
you
glass
know,
house.
and you got the Chinese and the Russians who have a capability to knock out these carriers now. So,
Yes.
you know, aircraft carriers. So
Yeah.
they may be obsolete.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. That's a 1980s weapon, or that's a weapon that you use against Yemen or something like that.
The only strong leg of the triad is the submarine.
Yeah. That brings me to another topic. Donald Trump is threatening Iran, and apparently he sent the letter. The letter said, either make a deal with me or else I'll wipe you off the face of the earth in 2 months, something to that effect. I'm paraphrasing. Iran responded to a third party, effectively saying, we will negotiate you with a third party, but we're not going to negotiate with you directly. We don't trust you, et cetera, et cetera. I don't blame him. Trump continued on this tirade. This is him again.
The secondary tariffs on Iran, and we'll probably give it a couple of weeks. And if we don't see any progress, we're going to put them on. We're not putting them on right now, but if you remember, I did that 6 years ago and did very well, put it mildly. And if the election weren't rigged, you would have a situation where there would be no problem with Iran today. But it was. Biden didn't know what he was doing, obviously. And we have a very rough situation in the Middle East because of that. You ended up with October 7th, and you would have never had October 7th, and you would have never had Russia going into Ukraine likewise. We're going to make a decision on secondary tariffs on Iran based on whether or not they're going to make a deal. If they're going to make a deal, then we're never going to put secondary tariffs on. We're going to hope they have a great, long, and successful life as a country. But we'll see what happens. It's very, very interesting. I can't imagine them doing anything else but making a deal. I would prefer a deal to the other alternative, which I think everybody in this plane knows what that is. And that's not going to be pretty, and I do not prefer that. So,
now, Ayatollah responded to this, and he effectively said, A, we don't believe him. But if he does, there will be a swift, I think he said, a strong response or swift response. Effectively, we will respond in kind to whatever you effectively do. Trump has loaded up military capabilities at Diego Garcia, multiple B-2 bombers, apparently the largest force that has been accumulated for God knows how long, that's waiting there with the thought of attacking Iran. Now, the question is he bluffing? Like, this is a hell of a bluff. And again, wars are unpredictable. The notion that you're going to hit Iran and you're going to destroy all of their silos, you're going to destroy all of their capabilities, and they're not going to be able to respond seems outlandish to me.
I think that this administration, unfortunately, is looking at its relationship with Iran and its conduct toward Iran with a certain tunnel vision. They're not looking at a broader geostrategic perspective. I'm afraid that given the importance of Iran to both Russia and China, they would not stand idly by if Iran were attacked. There might be some debate about that. I'm sure there will be, but Iran is too important for them, for those countries, in terms of their, in terms of the north, south, east, and west corridors for trade, and Iran is integral for that. And given the relationship that they now have, and the turmoil that would ensue, political turmoil that would ensue internally, should there be an attack, I think it would bring down all the Eurasian house of cards, if you will, of what they've been working on in terms of Belt and Road and BRICS. Already, we're seeing some cracks in the BRICS initiative. Increasingly, countries are insisting upon instead of working in local currencies, are now coming back talking about working only in terms of US dollars. So the Trump effect is there with respect to BRICS. Even they're going to go ahead, even though BRICS is going to go ahead with their effort to
the local currency,
create that alternative financial system to SWIFT. That said, from what I'm hearing, Trump is basically saying that a military response may not be immediate, although we don't know what Israel will do. Sometimes they can go on and drag us into this conflict. That's the problem. That's why Trump is not really in the position of acting and controlling all the movements and calling all the shots. I think that this is and Netanyahu is the unknown card here, and it would be in his interest to drag us into a conflict for his own survival purposes. And I think he would do that as a result of seeing the internal strife inside of Israel beginning to mount more and more and more. So I think that and I think that would be his the base upon which he would then launch an attack on Iran in order to unite the country at that point, because even internally, Israel is on the verge of a civil conflict.
Yeah, that's the case at this point.
So there's this consideration. So there's nothing can be looked at in terms of a vacuum. It all depends upon other elements that come into play, and it can happen like literally overnight.
Do you think they would destroy his presidency? I mean, I don't have this belief that he's going to be able to do this. And Iran, it's not Yemen, it's not Iraq, it's not one of these podunk countries that you can effectively hit and knock over. It's a country of 80 million people. It's 3 times the size of Iraq, and they're extraordinarily sophisticated militarily in regards to their weapons capability. I don't think this is the cakewalk that Donald Trump is implying. And I strongly suspect that their response is going to be withering. Like, there will be major political consequences in the region for the response if Donald Trump does something like this. But give me your take on that. I mean, they have said we're going to Brazilian government. We may hit Israel, meaning we may knock Israel off the face of the earth at that point. Like, what do you think that response will be? I mean, they say it will be a reciprocal response. Give me your thoughts.
I think these countries are beginning to pick up a pattern of behavior with Donald Trump that if they just procrastinate, kick the can, and drag him along, there's very little he can do on his own. Yeah, he could probably launch if he wanted to militarily, but then the battle would be on. Donald Trump cannot afford another war. In fact, he came on board as a peace president to solve wars such as Ukraine and Israel and Gaza, not to create a new one, which would be Iran, and thereby open up that entire regional to a new conflict altogether, which could bring in Russia and China for sure. I don't think that's what he wants, even though you hear Hegseth, the Secretary of Defense, saying China is our focus now. We're not worried about Russia any longer. Yes and no, but at the same time, you can't look at these things in a vacuum. You have to look at it in a greater geostrategic basis, and this administration, this White House, is not capable of it.
Michael, man, I always appreciate your analysis. One of the audience members sent the super chat saying, thank you for bringing Michael on.
Thank you.
The talk, where is it? Excellent chat with Michael Maloof. Thank you for having him. This was Dolan Deckett. So I wanted you to hear the love that
thank you very much
from the audience. Man,
somebody's listening.
Somebody's listening, right? Michael Maloof, he is former senior security policy analyst in the Office of Secretary of Defense, author, regular contributing analyst on RT and other media outlets. He has nearly 30 years of federal service in the U.S. Department of Defense and is a damn good friend of the show. Thank you, Michael. I appreciate it, man. Be safe.
Okay, Jamarl. Thanks so much.
Thank you. You have a good one. All right. We have come to the end. I have braved the pain of this thing that is dragging on my ass. So I am going to read the chats. I'm not going to carry it this morning or today. And I'm going to call it a day a bit earlier than normal. What is this? Ratson B. Harris, new member. Welcome to the family, Harris. Welcome to the Thomas family. You are welcome. You are loved. You have other members with you. It is deeply, deeply appreciated. Thank you for your support. Mr. Ripley, I can criticize Trump all day long, but the second I criticize Democrats too, I get accused of being a Trump supporter. It's so frustrating. Yeah, it's weird, right? In America, there's this duopoly thought that the moment you criticize one, you all of a sudden agree with the other. And as I have to tell people, dude, I can disagree with both. I'm perfectly okay with disagreeing with both. It's not like this person made an argument and it is either absolutely right or God's truth wrong. And it's like, they can both be wrong. They can both be full of shit. It's not like one is God's honest truth. I know liberals like to think that, oh, we're the moral party. We're the smart party. We're the party that gets it right. Okay, whatever, right? They think that. That's in their minds. That's why they lose. That is different than, making an argument and an argument being correct. They can make an argument might be correct. It doesn't make them as a edifice, the end all be all of things. They can fuck it up like anybody else can fuck it up, right? I can disagree with one and agree with the other, or vice versa, or I can disagree with both. It doesn't make you one or the other. One of the fascinating things is it's like you're talking to somebody and they're saying something on the Democratic side and you agree. And then they say something else and you viciously disagree and they're shocked by it. They're like, what just happened? They don't know what happened. Because from their point of view, well, if you agree with the Democratic thought on this, then you have to agree with everything. As if it's an entree that you have to eat everything that's on the entree. I can pick and choose. I'm a choosy, picky eater. I don't eat that. I don't eat that. That is disgusting. May taste a little bit of it. Depends on what it is. I think Trump is right on Ukraine, or at the very least what he's trying to do. Trash on most other things. I actually liked initially the idea of RFK going into health and human services because I thought this focus on childhood illness, focus on the American diet and those type of things. But then he fucks around and fires 44,000 people. Okay. What the fuck is that? Right? Like, what is that? How do you do that? And yet, you destroy all of these people's lives. And I have deep sympathy for this as somebody who was fired for doing their job. Meaning, when you've heard before, I'm not gonna go into it. My point is, you ruin lives. You create structures, or let's say you destroy these kind of structures that these people create in their lives. When you fire them out of hand, they didn't do anything wrong. You just had a new administration that decided the world's richest man wanted to punish and beat down the poorest, or at the very least, the average of our society. It's disgusting on its face. It's disgusting on its face. So I understand you on that. I feel you on that. I get that sometimes too. It's like, what? You're a Trumper? Dude, clearly you don't watch my channel. This entire show has been bashing Trump for the most part, with the exception of one or two items. So I feel your pain, Mr. Riffle. You're not alone. You're not alone. Could you beat Putin in a game of chess? I think you could. I would fuck him up in a game of chess. I'd fuck him up in a game of chess. In fact, I should pull it up right now and show my dominance. I just feel miserable. Black Spock. I love that name. God, I love that name. God, I love that name. Thank you. Black Spock. Shout out to you. Thank you. Janice Anderson from Likud. Every accusation is a confession. Yes. Like when Netanyahu is getting out there and is saying, these people are backing murderers and rapists, etc. I can show you video of them raping prisoners. I can show you video of them killing women and children. I can show you video of them beating the shit out of kids. Meaning, every accusation is effectively a confession of what they themselves are effectively doing. They're a fascist, racist society. It's not just Netanyahu. I hate it when people just continuously use Netanyahu as the scapegoat. It's all of them. You get like 90% of the population saying, yes, we agree with forced deportation of the Palestinian population. We want our greater Israel. It is a racist society. I've been there twice. It is a racist society. Love Americans. Fine with Americans. If you're Palestinian, that's your ass. That is your ass. Sophia Martinez. Thank you. Shout out to you, Sophia. Welcome to the family. Welcome to the family. Dolan Deckett. Excellent chat with Maloof. Thank you for having him. I love talking to Maloof. My mom says he's like a gangster, like with the thing. Sometimes he has a cigar. Yeah, love talking to Maloof. He knows this stuff. He's been doing this for like 30 years. And so his analysis tends to be, like you said, more geopolitical. I guess he's different than Mark. Both are good in their ways. So thank you for that. Oh, Dolan Duckett, welcome to the family. Welcome to the family. Welcome to the family. We got a lot of family members today. And Foment Dissident, what's your favorite Trek series and why? If you'd asked me this before, I would have said Next Generation is Deep Space Nine. Deep Space Nine. Deep Space Nine. I didn't like Deep Space Nine as a kid. When I got older and I started doing political stuff, oh, I soaked into it like I had never watched it before. And it is deeply political. Keep in mind, when Cisco is going to a planet that had been occupied for, like 50, 60 years, where the Cardassians have effectively raped the planet over. And in doing so, Cisco goes there with the idea of being, they wouldn't say a force, but effectively a Federation force to prevent the Cardassians from coming back and to help repair Bajor. So you're dealing with people who were like Hamas. Kira would be a Hamas member who is effectively on the bridge of the ship on the Deep Space thing, hates Cardassians, angry at what they did. And you had an entire planet that effectively was raped over the coals that have some feelings about the fact that they were raped over the coals that the Federation is now trying to bring into modernity again after the Cardassians have effectively destroyed the planet. Star Trek, Cisco has to shepherd that. It's complicated. He has to deal with these complicated emotions. He still has to deal with the Cardassians. He has to deal with the Bajorans. And these people have a very different view of what took place. From the Cardassians' point of view, hey, manifest destiny. What are you complaining about? It's a wild thing. Like, the show is astonishing. And then when you get into the point by season 3 where you get into the Jem'Hadar, all hell breaks loose. Star Trek, it's not entirely right in that. Like, when the Federation, because the Federation is putting out their own propaganda of sorts, right? They're like, we can go wherever we want. Really? You can go wherever you want? How do you know somebody's not in that quadrant already? You didn't give a shit. You're just sending people through the wormhole. And then when the wormhole responds back, you're like, oh my God, I can't believe they're responding back. Well, yeah, you would do the same thing if it was in your space. I remember episodes where Kirk stopped ships from going beyond the speed limit or some nonsense like that. My point is, it is a fascinating series, and it gives you a test. Look, I could be a beautiful human being when I'm by myself. If there's nobody around me and I'm alone, I'm perfect. I'm a flawless human being. You put me with other human beings, okay, now we have tests, right? Like, the moment that you start creating complications, that's when you test your mettle. What are you in real terms? What are you really? Not just what you say you are, not just what you think you are, but what are you really when you're put under test? All right, what are these best versions of human beings that we can think of? Moral, ethical, human beings that wouldn't let authority stand in the way of them doing the ethical and moral thing. What does that look like in a war? And what does that look like in a war that slowly escalates over the course of like 6 seasons, where it's not just flat out, it's one step after the next. What happens when Earth has a changeling on the planet and they don't know who it is? And they start putting in martial law. And Cisco makes the argument for martial law, even to the point of his dad. Like, that's amazing. Look, even at our best, we respond to environmental circumstances as an absolute. There's no way around it. Like, you are who you are because your environment allows you to be who you are. And there was always this argument that Star Trek couldn't exist in a universe to which they found themselves. Like, how could you have like somebody like Picard in a world where you have Cardassians and you have these intelligence agencies that don't have your values and will do anything in order to succeed? Yeah, you got a military edge in the sense of your craft and everything else, but the reality of it is you have subversive organizations that will do anything that does not have a moral core. There's a great episode in Strange New Worlds where Christopher Pike, who I love, by the way, he is in a negotiation with a Cardassian. I think it's Cardassian or Romulan. I think it might be Romulan. I don't remember which. Pike is confronted with a ship that Kirk dealt with in the original series. Now, Kirk's response in the original series was to hunt it down and kill it. Military guy, right? I'm going to kill that ship. We cannot let that ship get back to Cardassia or to Romulus. I'm going to kill it. And that's what Kirk did. Kirk hunted the ship down, killed it. Now, again, this is not the most moral Star Trek. This is practical in regards to what Kirk is doing. When Christopher Pike, through a time loop type thing, engaged in the same situation, Pike wanted to negotiate. And Pike believes firmly to his core that if you extend your hand out, you give a chance for the other person to extend their hand too. And that you're willing to take the risk of extending your hand out with the hope that they reciprocate. Now, the Romulan leader was willing to do that. He's like, I'm sick of these wars. I'm tired. His underling was not. And his underling contacts back to headquarters, brings in an armada, and initiates a war that Pike and the Federation was ill prepared for. Pike got it wrong. Pike believed that people would respond to you if you're kind and moral and just and ethical, etc. Wasn't true in this case. It will be true in other cases. And it was true in the case of the leader of it, not the rest. It's fascinating dilemmas, right? Meaning, because in the Star Trek universe, they're willing to risk their lives for ethical reasons, for moral reasons, because that is their ethos. That is what they believe in. They're cultish in the way that they engage. And I wouldn't say cultish. That point of view allows a better world. Full stop. Right? That's what they believe. That's their ethos. Deep Space Nine puts those people who are that way into a situation with an organization that is just as politically savvy, that is just as militarily savvy, not just as more militarily savvy. If it wasn't for God getting involved, the Federation would have been taken over. And keep in mind, the reason they end up winning the war is because Cisco helped murder a Romulan and blame it on the Jem'Hadar in order to get the Romulan Empire into the war. Now, granted, this is not befitting of a Starfleet officer, but the question has to be asked, is your integrity worth billions of people dying? Right? That's the question. Is your integrity as a Starfleet officer worth all these people dying? I'm sorry. Dude, don't get me talking about Star Trek. Don't get me talking about Star Trek. Don't get me talking about Star Trek. I will be here all day. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I did not mean to do that. I apologize to all of you in the audience. That was not my intention. Faux dissident set me up I'm a Jimadar, and it's great. Cisco acting messed me up at first, but I love Cisco. Like when I first saw him, I thought, okay, we got the black captain. And he came into his own. Show after show after show, he came into his own. Yeah, he could be a bit dramatic. Agreed. But his relationship with his son, oh God, I loved his relationship with his son. Like there was an honest fondness that seemed to be had between them. In a way that I haven't really seen in Star Trek. Maybe Kirk and Spock, but that's a different relationship. Seeing a black father and a black kid, and yeah, I'm going to race at this point. My dad wasn't around me, right? Seeing a black father, love his black kid, support, care about his black kid. And then in the episode where Cisco got lost and Jake spent his entire life working to get Cisco back. Oh, it is so good. It's so good. No, man, he's grew on me. He grew on me big time. All right. Faux meant dissonant set me up. You totally set me up. But fair enough. Fair enough. I swear to God, I could gribble. Don't tempt me with a good time. Don't tempt me with a good time. Do not tempt me with a good time. Honestly, just screening 2-part in theater, sometimes at the measure of a man chain of command would have been a more powerful. Yeah, agreed. Also, with the Dias cast, that's another really good one. Oh, that's so good. With Garrett, I think that's the one where he ends up torturing Odo, and Garrett meets his dad, but his dad would never admit that it was his dad. And it was like in his dying moments, he's like, come on. It's time. It's like, dude, it's just us. Are you still pulling the shit where you're not gonna own me? Oh, it's so good, so good. Like some of those scenes are fantastic in regards to the acting, especially Garrett. Garrett's character is phenomenal. Bashir annoyed the shit out of me often. Like, honestly, you will fundamentally disagree with me with this, but there is no way an organization like Star Trek could exist without a Section 31. You need somebody to take care of the kids. I don't mean that brutally. I don't mean that meanly. But you need the man on the wall who knows, okay, those are your values. That's not their values. None of the stuff exists that you believe in. All of this is contrived. You've come up with a mindset that allows you to work together and build a society that is phenomenal, strong, just, righteous, all that stuff. They don't believe that. None of it's real. This is something that you yourself have decided upon. It is cultish. Fair enough. We accept that in Section 31. We understand why you're doing that, but we also know it is not real. And it behooves us to protect what you yourselves have created. And we will do that in the shadows. Now, Bashir will take issue with that. He's out of his fucking mind. You're dealing with governments that don't have your value set, that don't believe the things that you believe in, that know that the things that you believe in are just what you believe. It's not real, right? The morality, the ethics, none of that stuff are real. And so you almost require to have something like that working in the shadows in order to ensure the integrity of the organization that you created. Now, is that contradictory? Yes. Yes. But there's nothing in reality that says it needs to be any particular way. Meaning when scientists are like studying atoms, they're like, wow, that quantum world is weird. Yeah, dude, it's not weird. It is what it is. There's nothing that requires your brain to understand the way something works for it to actually work. And so, yes, it can be contradictory. That contradictory is something that is just required, right? No, I don't want to see a Section 31 TV show. It breaks the model. I don't want to see it. If you want to add elements of it here, there, fair enough. I don't want to see it. It breaks the model. That vision of humanity is necessary. It's something to strive for, something that people can conceptualize, can see. It creates a model for people to strive towards in a way that goes beyond this kind of cynical, cutthroat television that we see that mirrors our reality. We need to be able to reach for something more. This is the Christopher Pike point of view. I accept that. Fair enough. But I think Pike is right, ultimately. The world that you get, is effectively the world that you strive for. And if we have these kind of ideas of ethics, freedom, justice, love, etc., you can have that world. That world is not impossible, especially with technological development at the point where you get beyond this notion of we're just at basic survival. I have no idea how this model gets broken to get to that. No idea. Even Jack Fresco, when he's talking about the Venus Project, and you're like, hey, Jack, how do you do it? And he sits there, thumb in his ass, without the ability to answer the question. Fantastic series, though. Deep Space Nine is so good. It's so good. I sat there and watched the thing from the very beginning to the very end, over and over again, just binge watching it. It is so good. What's the last one? Yes, Trek Stream, only if possible. Oh, dude, I don't know if anybody will watch that. There are 333 people that are being held hostage by me talking about Star Trek. I don't know if anybody in real terms would ever actually watch that stream. Maybe. I mean, it would have to be like a separate channel, but you already have people out there who do it much better. Not to mention, I'm not good with the video editing. But it is a fantastic series. I don't know how many people are entirely into it. I don't know how many people I will tell you this. When I was a kid, Star Trek used to come on 3 times, at 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock, and 1 o'clock. And my ass was up watching it every morning till 1 in the morning. And I was always an insomniac for the most part. And they would switch up between Voyager and Deep Space Nine. At the time, I couldn't really get into Deep Space Nine. I was like, God, man, this seems so gritty. Like, New Generation, Next Generation was very bright. It was like a carnival cruise, right? Bright, vibrant colors, bright, vibrant outfits. The people were, well, I had to thank for Deanna Troy, if I'm being bluntly honest with you. God, I was in love with her. But put that to the side for the moment. Very bright colors. Then we get to Deep Space Nine, grungy, dark. The uniforms were darker. The people were more gruff. The characters, Kira, she was a terrorist. Odo, he was head of the police force on a station that was effectively carrying slaves, right? These are dark events that are taking place that you're bringing these as good as possible human beings into in order to deal with. Oh, it's fascinating. Oh, it's so good. Okay, my wistfulness is over. I'm going to end this. Listen, do a poll, Jamal. You do it by reading Lenin. What? You do it by reading Lenin. I've read that book. I know, I've heard the argument. Socialist, what's his name? Socialist libertarian. He's made that argument that the Jack Fresco view of the world, what is his name? Zeitgeist, that view of the world is effectively socialist libertarianism. Maybe. I mean, Star Trek never really explains their economy, right? It's like, how do you explain your economy? What's his name? Fresco would say it is a environmental based, or not environmental based, needs based, not needs based. That's a specific word for it. But the goal of it is different. The goal of it is not necessarily maximize profit. In fact, one of the great episodes was on Next Generation, where all of these people get bought out of a tank after, from 20th century. And one of the guys talked to Picard. He's like, where's your money? How do I make wealth? And Picard is like, what are you talking about? We don't waste our time on those stupid stuff like that. Like Picard berates the guy. For basically we disposed of those stupid ideas long ago. And even that episode where Q puts Picard on trial, that is one of the best. Look, I will tell you, I know a lot of people didn't like the first season of Next Generation, fair enough. The episode where Q puts humanity on trial and Picard has to stand there representing the everyman. Like, he is, it's almost like God is prosecuting you. And Picard has to stand there representing all of humanity over the entire span of time. And as Q is exposing this stuff, Picard is humiliated by it. Like, he doesn't even want to own it. You can see it. His acting is fantastic. Keep in mind, Picard is a Shakespearean actor. Can't think of his name. It'll come to me in a moment. He's a Shakespearean actor. And so when he's doing his character, he is doing it well. Oh, he's doing it so well. And you can see the pain on him as Q is going after this proud man by having to represent all of these failings and faults of humanity over the course of time. It is so good. It is so good. Those who enjoy Star Trek will talk about the show they love. Yeah, but we've dropped about 100 people. So, Patrick Stewart, thank you. Patrick Stewart, thank you. I'm going to close this. You guys have set me up. You know, this is my weakness. I'm going to end this here. I'm going to say like. I'm going to say share. 30 minutes talking about this. All right. I'm going to say like. I'm going to say share. I'm going to say subscribe. If I'm being honest, it made my day. Thank you for that. You guys have a fantastic day. Signing off.